You can't help but slap at the bass and get stuck into that song. It really does get you going on a Monday morning. You need it too, wouldn't you?
Yeah, the old early rise on a Monday morning. A Monday morning without hurling at the weekend, always a difficult Monday morning as well.
Wow. I tell you, if Kerry and Antrim people weren't insulted enough last week,
without hurling that you can't watch without having to pay some fee or something like that. Without hurling that's not on a national broadcaster or even Sky Sports, it makes it quite difficult to access for an awful lot of people. But it is different when there's not a hurling game on a Sunday. I can't remember before last weekend. I can't remember the last time there wasn't a big hurling game on a Sunday. There's been one the whole way through. I suppose there aren't too many matches from here on in, but let's just hope we get something. Let's hope we get a little bit of a kickback even off that Munster final, and the quality stays high, the intensity stays high. But quiet enough weekend in that regard. Watched an awful lot of football. Some good, some not so good.
Okay, so just a reminder, we're brought to you by OurGameRetro.com. If you want to get any of the jerseys on screen, there's a whole raft of jerseys from all the different counties there. Use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off. Look at this Wexford one here, 1996, the glory days. Well, do you know who we're going to have on the show today is Billy Byrne, the legend of that era. So looking forward to chatting to him. Going to be some good insights because obviously Wexford beat Kerry over the weekend, which means they're going on to the All-Ireland quarter-final this weekend. I was watching Cork against Antrim as well, and we'll talk about that performance. But I suppose the thing that we can't not start off on is the Clare and the proposed one-match bans to both Peter Duggan and Rory Hayes. So what were your thoughts when you saw this come through?
So I was a bit surprised, to be honest with you, because obviously, those clips were highlighted, I suppose, in isolation, in the sense of there was all Clare clips, there was no Limerick clips, there wasn't much balance to it. But I didn't think they'd react as they have. It looks like it's just a direct reaction to that part of the Sunday game where they're talking about those clips. It's a funny one because John Keenan refereed the match the way he did, earned an awful lot of plaudits as a result of that. And now, they're essentially going back on his performance, if you know what I mean. And basically, from what I gather, is saying that he should have, seen these incidents at the time and should have dealt with them at the time. Yeah, but it's just when you go back through, like, even the Ian Galvin kind of, I don't know what you call it, a situation, or it was a bit of a farce around him. The fact, that his case was so convoluted, I suppose, and he couldn't get off for that Limerick game in the round robin. And now you're looking at it. It looks a bit like Clare been pinpointed somewhat. But if you look at this, like, they're coming off an extra time defeat in the Munster final. That's hard in itself to get over. Like, that's a hard thing to bridge that gap. And now they're going to be missing two of their best players. Duggan has been unbelievable since he came back. Rory Hayes probably had a tough day at the office in the Munster final, but outside of that has been absolutely brilliant. And they have a good squad. Can they potentially replace these two guys and get over the line? Going to be difficult.
Yeah, Sean O'Sullivan says here, if a red can be appealed, then a ref's decision isn't final. Clare lads playing dirty can have no complaints for getting clipped. So I think, we talked through it last week, and I suppose if we're to just recapping it, you can't really complain with Peter Duggan getting his red card his retrospective red card for what he did with Sean Finn. Now, look, we went over.
I'm not 100% sure if it is that, if that's what he's been cited for, or if it's the punch, potentially the punch that he's been cited for.
Yeah, I would have seen it that he went like that against Will O'Donoghue. I see nothing in that really, but look, I'm not really a person who's that mad on red cards, but anyway, that I wouldn't see too much in that. And then the other one, I suppose Rory Hayes can't complain. Again, he was being held by Seamus Flanagan a bit like the way Sean Finn was holding Peter Duggan. But still, if it's a red card, you can't complain too much. But I mean, the question I'd ask is, these aren't the only incidents after games ever shown on TV. Why has the committee decided to pick up these clips and not other ones? Like, go back over the years. Austin Gleeson shouldn't have played in the 2017 All-Ireland final, but we all sort of collectively agreed, let's sweep this one under the carpet, for the helmet pull on Luke Meade in the All-Ireland semi-final. And I think Adrian Toohey was very lucky to also play in the final that same year. time and time again, we've seen ones that have been swept under the carpet. Like last year, Keane Lynch did the judo flip on Tim O'Mahony, and there was no retrospective ban. I think everyone's happy to let's move on from this. The same with Aaron Gallan last year in the Munster final. There was no retrospective ban. So why all of a sudden these guys? So like people are slating the Sunday game and all that kind of stuff, which is, a national obsession to do. But at the same time, it's not like these were the first clips ever put out there. Why did they act on these ones?
Yeah, that is really the big one. There's been so many things happen down through the years, that people have shown on social media, and the people that's been highlighted on the Sunday game as well, and nothing has been done as a result. I don't know. It looks very reactionary, shall we say? And I'm just like playing devil's advocate here, but if we pull up some sort of clip or stills of 5 or 6 things that happened on a Monday morning, and we put them out on social media and they get a lot of traction, people start talking, people say X, Y, and Z. Does that mean, have we the potential to get a player banned? It just seems a bit strange. And can I just say something about the footage that was shown on the Sunday game? Because I do think there's been a couple of misconceptions around it. I thought what Brendan Cummins in particular, what he said was quite fair. I didn't think he had a go at anyone or anything like that. It's just the fact that the footage that they showed was unfair. And if they're going to show a couple of pieces of action on one side that are controversial, it's not as if there weren't ones there on the other side that they could have showed as well, or even showed various things maybe that Limerick have done in previous games. But I don't think there was anything that was said that was particularly unfair. And I think it's been mentioned that there was biased commentary. Obviously, pointing the finger at Shane Dowden. I honestly don't think he said anything that was in any way biased about those incidents, to be honest with you. If you go back through what he said very little. And even Brendan Cummins, who went into it a bit more, he didn't say, we need to nail this guy or we need to nail that guy. That wasn't said. And can I just say as well, they're commentators. They have to comment on these things. And I'm sure it was probably a case where the gun was probably put to their head, where it was we need to talk about this. They talked about them. I don't think they went in really hard or anything like that. They just said, we prefer not to see this. And it's not as if, it's just that they made a beeline for probably 3 Clare incidents and there was no balance on the other side.
Yeah, at the same time, I've worked in there a bit this summer, and I do think there's autonomy with the pundits. So I would imagine that they can push to look at the clips that they want to. So I think there's a bit of that. But I suppose, and you see some of the clips flying around about, should Limerick players have also been cited? So there was that ruck that Will O'Donoghue, and it was the one where Tony Kelly won possession turn and scored that brilliant point. And there was a bit of a clear out of Shane O'Donnell by Seamus Flanagan. Now, I think if you're going to cite the other ones, that's one that you could probably be looking at doing a suspension on. And then the other one involving Cathal Malone and Seamus Flanagan that was flying around, I don't see too much in that. But there was an incident a while back where other pundits in football were talking about the danger of the headlock. So I think if it was someone on high that was deciding it, that they would have decided on the basis, well, here's another headlock, we have to stay very heavy on this. So I think it's more down to the individual pundits on the night deciding. And, as far as I know as well, it's not like Shane Dowling was just picked for this particular night, just ahead of the game. These are decided, it's decided weeks and weeks beforehand who goes in for certain shows. The schedule is pre-done beforehand. Now, you could predict that Limerick were going to be in the Munster final. That's fair enough, but I think that's just kind of how it went. But those Limerick ones, do you think either of those on Seamus Flanagan, for example, should have been red cards?
So it's all taken in the context of these been deemed as one-match bans now. The Clare ones, and if you're saying that they are all going to be one-match bans, well, then you could be handing out one-match bans to 5 or 6 other players. I think you're the same as me. I don't particularly want to see anybody missing games. I don't want to see anybody sent off during games. But if you're looking at one, you have to look at the other realistically. And it just looks like this is kind of coming in a vacuum almost. You know what I mean? It's just like it's almost like Clare players are the only players that do anything on a pitch. God, you really you can't get away with anything with the amount of cameras that are going around on a pitch now. But God, players are going to have to be so careful even if they don't give away a free during a game, they're looking at the potential of a red card or something thereafter. I just think that this week is going to be really fascinating from several points of view. Number one, with the with these infractions, shall we say, there's a total information vacuum. Like, I don't even know if Clare have been, given notice of these indiscretions or whatever. How do you know when? You should know when the case has been heard. You should know whether they're appealing. All this should go through official channels. You've seen it with the DRA as well. When you're a journalist trying to get information about a DRA appeal, it's basically like if you know somebody that's involved with the county board, or you're waiting for word back, can you give me a text when you hear? Like, there's such an information vacuum as well. The fact that we're not even 100% sure what the instances are that these players have been brought up over, it could all be dealt with an awful lot better, shall we say. And over the coming days, I presume they're going to appeal. You'd imagine they're going to appeal, because it's not a round robin game that's of no consequence. It's an All-Ireland quarter final where it's win or bust, really. And then you have the scenario of potentially, more than likely, it's going to go down to the DRA, and it'll be a Friday night here, and Clare won't know whether they have potentially the two lads available or not until the early hours of Saturday morning. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. Lohan, there's one thing for sure, and I mean this as a compliment, he will create a siege mentality, because they've had to create siege mentalities before in his own playing days, and even in the last couple of years, when it would have definitely seemed that even some of his own were going against him and playing against him. So no better man to create a siege mentality and come out fighting, regardless of whether they have the two lads or not.
Yeah, Flash says Clare can reap what they sow. They were perfectly fine with highlighting incidents when it was Limerick. Literally every Clare person pre-Munster final was talking about how Limerick were lucky with Reds. Sir Guy, who smiles on Twitter, says 2 Clare players got retrospective bans. When was the last time a Limerick player got a retrospective ban and you're whinging that you've been picked on? Catnap says, suck it up, Clare, play on the edge, rely on the refs swallowing the whistle, deal with the consequences. It's not the fault of the Sunday game. That's whataboutery, deflecting from the issue. Colin O'Halloran, geez, ye Limerick lads are very touchy on this. Sean O'Sullivan, are Clare famous for playing dirty? Does Brian Cody wear a cap? Let's see, 1998 all over again. Can't reel lads in talking about Galway. Would be absolutely delighted if Wexford dumped them out on Saturday, says Flash. And Catnap is not a good solution. People want to see a free-flowing, combative game. Ref misses big calls, game for the ages. Everyone happy. Major incidents dealt with retrospectively. Yeah, I don't know. It felt like the game was, even though there's the odd tackle that goes in over the top, it just felt like, to me, like this was played in pretty much the right spirit. You're seeing players embrace after the game. You're seeing mentors of opposing teams congratulate players on the opposite team or commiserate them or whatever. It just seemed like all fair is love and war, and let's move on. And like is a time-honoured tradition in the GA, let's sweep those incidents under the carpet because everyone lived to fight another day. Let's just move on. I mean, that's not the PC way to look at it, but I feel like that's the sort of the way that players and management want, and most supporters want to look at it.
Yeah, it's the common sense way to look at it, I would say. The thing about
but it's the common sense not to look at the reality that some things did go over the edge. But so I suppose common sense is a small bit of a stretch.
Yeah, but just on some of the incidents, so say like when Gerard Hegarty was given his second yellow in Ennis, there was probably a bit of simulation involved there. In fairness, in all these incidents that we're talking about here, and probably one of the reasons why they didn't come to light on the day is, Will O'Donoghue didn't go down and lie down. Sean Finn didn't go down and lie down. I don't even know if Seamus Flanagan realised that a hurl hit his back. Shane O'Donnell, when he was, kind of ran through by Flanagan, he wasn't down on the ground for a couple of minutes after. They all just got up and went back at it again, and that's probably one of the main reasons why nothing was dealt with on the day. And listen, yourself, you've been involved in various games. Those sort of things happen in, similar kind of things happen in every game, particularly at close quarters. Like within club games, all that kind of stuff happens. You take a swipe back at a lad, he's pulling at you. It happens. It just looks like they've been focused on. It's just been a Clare heavy focus in this instance, and there's no point saying any different. It puts their season in some jeopardy if they have to play without these two guys.
The one thing I would say is though, like if you flake a guy and you end up giving him a broken hand or something like that, there's no doubt but you deserve the retrospective action. But like even with Keenan Fahy, Richie Reid, I should say, is fine after, you know, he was stood on by Keenan Fahy. But I don't think anyone across the country has any issue with a retrospective ban there. That's clear cut. And, you know, you're not trying to sully the name of the person, but that one was just clear cut.
No, I'd agree with you there. If it's something like that, like, yeah, say even, yeah, I don't want to bring up any incidents from the past, but things where lads end up injured or in a cast or broken fingers, you know, broken foot, anything like that from a stroke or something like that, where there is clear intent in it, then I think you're probably going down a different road. But just that someone there, Flash says, I don't think the retrospective bans lessen John Keenan's performance, and referees, those situations should have been dealt with by his umpires or by men on the sideline. Funny how the Ennis umpires could see. We'll just stop there. But I definitely don't think it does not lessen his performance. And you cannot see everything that's going on with a game that's that helter-skelter. I'd love to know, you know, how much ground he even covered throughout the 90-plus minutes or whatever, and how much you have to see. It would literally need eyes in your head to see everything that was going on. And I still stand over and think I thought it was a brilliant refereeing performance, in fairness, and it played into one of the best games I can remember seeing in my lifetime.
Red Lad says it's a yellow for an attempted swing and a player shouldn't matter if he went down. A Sully 180. If you swing a hurley like a side, a la Colin Lynch 1998, then you should face retrospective action. I'm delighted to say we're joined by Wexford and Naveana legend Billy Byrne. Billy, how's things with you?
Good, Shane, and yourself?
Not too bad at all. I suppose we want to get your opinion on this as well. The number one, it was a great Munster final, but these retrospective bans to Peter Duggan and Rory Hayes, Keenan Fahy, of course, got one for Galway as well. What are your thoughts on matches like this being revisited and players now being suspended for the upcoming game?
I suppose everyone would have a different idea what they believe should happen and everything, but I think the referees are under a lot of pressure. I mean, I was at the Leinster final, and the amount of frees in the Leinster final killed it as a game, to be honest with you. The Munster final is one of the best hurling finals that I've seen, and for a referee, I'd have to say you take your hat off to him the way he refereed it. You can't get every incident. There is, as I will agree, that there is other officials there that are able to pick up on things, but it's a very, very fast game. It's the fastest game in the world, and it's very, very hard to get everything right. I think the big problem, and one of the most problems, is that Sunday night at around 10:30, 11 o'clock, when all this is really brought to bear on what's happened during the day, no matter what the matches was like, there's a lot of negativity comes into what's happening regarding one of the best games that we've seen in a long, long time. And I think most refereeing now decisions are made between 9:30 and 11:30 on a Sunday night when it's brought up on television.
And do you feel that those incidents merit red cards and suspensions, or do you think once the game is done, leave it? I mean, there are situations where players really do cross the line, like the Galway ban certainly feels merited to us, whereas the other ones were a bit more like, right, that was part of the war, the players are pulling and dragging out of each other, lads are going to, you know, what's your thoughts on whether they should or shouldn't be banned?
The ban is getting more prolific now, I'd say, as regards, but again, in the heat of battle, like, it's all right to have someone talking that really hasn't been there and hasn't been done to. When you're playing full forward, as you know, if you have cornerbacks and fullbacks coming in on you, that's the game. And we've all taken the field to know that you have to be able to basically physically be able to stand up in your own corner. And if you don't do that, you're more than likely going to get the curly finger and be taken off. So that's the way the game is. The game was always played that way. I mean, one of the best games in the world is rugby. They're able to run at each other 100 miles an hour, hit each other. They're able to tackle each other. They're on top of each other. And like we come along, and the next minute, two guys are shorter than one another going down the tunnel, and it's one of the biggest incidents in the game of hurling. I think that in itself probably tells you where this game is going. That we have a lot of analysing on the game of hurling. It is an amateur game. It's a game that's been there for a long, long time. It's played at a ferocious pace, and it's very, very hard for the referees to pick up on everything, and that's the officials as well. It's okay to slow it down when you're looking at it on television to be able to pick up these incidents, but in the heat of battle, it's very, very hard. But I would have to commend the refereeing for the Munster final compared to where we were in basically a free take and shootout in the Leinster final.
Michael?
Yeah, no, Billy, I'm just wondering from a Wexford point of view, how happy, I know you'd love to win next weekend, but it'd be somewhat tainted if you were winning with Clare missing two of their best players as well. Realistically, you've played for years as well. You want to play against the best of what Clare have to offer, don't you? You want those two boys on the pitch.
100%, and they should be on the pitch as well. And I might add, the 70 minutes the game was over. The referee has put in his decision, but again, I'm saying most of these decisions are made after the game is gone. And I know that that's the way everything is basically going, but I think it's very, very hard. And I think it's hard on any player for that to happen, that is brought up, and really the pressure has been put on the GAA for this, for the time that you're looking at it on television and what's happening on television, and the referee is brought in, a referee who actually done a brilliant job has been brought in and been questioned, and then to make it even worse that it's fallen back on the two or three players. Things do happen, and the Peter Duggan incident, that has happened and it will happen in the game of hurling. And if we start to take some of these things out of the game of hurling, I will agree, striking with a hurl at a dangerous height is definitely ones where you have to have your yellow card. But it's getting more and more prolific now as regards small things that are happening now. And people will say, well, that was a big thing. But in the game of hurling, you ask any player who's been in there, who has a cornerback hanging over him or a fullback on top of him, I keep saying this, if you don't fight your corner and you don't stand up for yourself in there, you are going to end up being taken off.
Just on that, Billy, you do, there's a certain, I don't know, it's hard to describe it, but if you're playing full forward and there's a fullback hanging out of you, there are certain things, and he's maybe hitting you off the ball, there are certain things that you just have to do to be able to play your game, aren't there? And that's just the way it is. And even the Peter Duggan one on Sean Finn, I don't think there was anything malicious threatening that. I think he was just probably trying to get away from him, get him off his back. And those things happen in every game.
I'd say that, and I'd say if you ask Sean Finn, Sean Finn will tell you straight, that's what we're in there for. That's what the game of hurling is about. And this incident, there's one or two incidents brought up to basically, try and bring it into possibly one of the best games. And that's what, the promotion of hurling, or what happened for 75 minutes of that game, and there's two incidents brought up that took 20 seconds, I think is, it's too long being spent on it, we talk about. And what happened for that 20 seconds for two guys to be suspended is not the game of hurling that certainly I played, and that 99.9% of the guys that are still playing are out there for.
If we're to move on to the All-Ireland preliminary quarter-final over the weekend, Billy, Wexford 330, Kerry 18 points. For those who didn't really see it, Lee Chin scored 14 points, 11 of those were placed balls. Rory O'Connor hit 1-4, Conor MacDonald 1-3, Conor Hearn with the other goal. A few other lads pitched in the points as well. On the Kerry side, Podge Boyle scored 7 frees, Jordan Conway scored 5 points, Owen Ross and Sean Weir and a couple others got on the score sheet. Was this an impressive performance from Wexford?
I wouldn't say an impressive performance, but I'd say it was a performance that they're very happy with, to be honest with you. The big thing I'd say was, for the Wexford point of view, was not to give away any early goals. And you'd see what that done, I'd say, on the other quarter final. Once Antrim got 2 goals, Cork, the pressure really came on Cork. So from that point of view, I'd say Wexford are very, very happy. Once they didn't let any goals in to get the crowd going, basically, they silenced the crowd by just picking off the points and making sure that Kerry could only get scores of the points value. So I'd say they're very, very happy. Not too many injuries come out. Cathal Dunbar maybe was one of the injuries. They'll be a bit sore today, but I think, a long trip down to Kerry to come out, not conceding any goals and scoring 330, I'd say they're happy enough just to get back to Wexford, get their bodies back in line and get ready for a serious battle next Saturday.
Who played well, Billy?
When you look at it, you'd have to say maybe Rory O'Connor, who is hurling very well, Lee Chin, and these are guys at the start of the campaign that weren't really 100% fit. Probably maybe Lee Chin still not 100%, but again, Matthew O'Hanlon very good, Liam Ryan good, Damien Rick, the guys that have stood up and say in the Kilkenny game again, and one or two like Conor Hearn coming on. You have to introduce these younger guys, but Shane Rick coming in as well, because Shane always able to do a job for you when we play Clare. But our results against Clare in the last couple of championship outings hasn't been great. So we've a lot to try and put right before we meet them next Saturday.
And what about Kerry then? Because Stephen Mullumphey said after the game that his team would benefit from playing top tier sides like Wexford. And he said 100%. Small things that show the cuteness, things happen a little quicker, players' movement to create space. The lads would have learned more and will bank that. That's why you're involved in this. You know, the more of it, the better. So the thought of, would you see Kerry going into Munster? Like, obviously it's not going to happen. They're going to have to get promoted for that to happen. But do you think that they're a bit off the grade just yet?
You never know if they're off the grade until it's tried, to be honest with you, and some of the league matches, maybe when you look at Antrim done this year, but you have to, for the managers of these teams, that's where they want to get. So, and I think over the last, not only this year, but maybe the last 2 or 3 years, that Kerry have deserved that. I mean, I would certainly, there's a lot of people wouldn't agree with me because but I think Kerry playing at home in a championship match against a Waterford or their next door neighbours in Limerick, that would definitely generate, and it'd be a high profile match for Kerry people to go to and to support. So I couldn't see a problem with him being up there, and I don't think they can see a problem. The problem was within some of the people that think that maybe they're not up to that standard. But anyone who's seen him over the last, not just this year, last couple of years, they're well up to that standard. And for the game to grow in Kerry, that's where they need to be. You're probably a small bit disappointed as well that the games weren't shown on television on Saturday as well, which would promote it again. And it's all about the promoting of the game of hurling in these counties for to really make a thrive.
So in terms of how Wexford play, and having been a full forward, do you look in at this team now in year one under Darragh Egan, who's obviously taken over for David Fitz, and think this is a team where I'd like to play full forward here, given the quality of ball coming in, or is that not the case?
You'd have to, I mean, if you go back last year and the year before for the play, you would be mean a very, very frustrated full forward in the modern, sometimes in the modern game. And that's what I like about Clare, and they're very, very direct. And, that's what you're going to get next Saturday. And it's the same with Limerick. They do play passes out of trouble, but they do play it very direct and they get it into the full forward line. And that's where most of their damage is done. I think Darragh has come on a long way from where we were for the last 2 or 3 years. That the likes of Conor McDonald, you're starting to see him on the score sheet more often. He's starting to get these chances. The same with Rory on the inside forward. Yesterday, they played both Lee Chin and Conor McDonald. You're not going to play Lee Chin and Conor McDonald in there if you're not to hit the ball into him. So it sent out that directive, and it tells the half back line and your full back line where the ball needs to be when they get possession of it. We do fall back in sometimes, and it would have cost us maybe in the earlier league where we play a lot of ball out of defence, and I mean a lot of ball, but to get it from our 21 to the 50, and that was causing us problems. So we are definitely more direct than we have been for the last number of years, and I think that's why the likes of you're going to see the more Lee Chin on the full forward line with maybe 2 forwards that are well capable of winning the ball in the air, and the ball will be coming in the air more direct than it has been for the last number of years. And I think that's more of a Wexford style of hurling, and Darragh is coming back to that style of hurling.
Just on that, Billy, Conor had a bit of a thankless job at times in at the edge of the square. Like, you're nearly marking 3 fellas and the ball coming in is not particularly good. Whereas now he's kind of, we all know he's a great paw and he's a great finisher. He's getting a chance to kind of maybe do what he does best now. Whereas I do think it was a bit of a thankless job he was doing at times over the last couple of years.
It was definitely over the last couple of years he would have been frustrated at times, and that's why he loved being brought out the wing forward. But he's very, very quick hands. If he gets the ball before, like, the time it leaves his hands then it hits the top of the hurl, it's very, very fast, and he's hard to get a block on. But I can see in himself that he's a lot happier now that he knows. Now it took him a while, to be honest with you, to revert back to where he would have been 3 or 4 years ago, and a lot younger, that the ball was coming in more often. But it was a thankful job. It was a job that Davy, you'd have to say, for the first 2 years worked very well for Davy. And, he got some very good results. And both Conor knew what exactly, but over the last 2 years, to look in at your full forward and to be wrestling basically with a cornerback or a full forward or a fullback, it's not his type of hurling. He likes fast ball in, the same as Lee Chin, the same as any forward, to be honest with you. And that's the way the game has gone. The quicker the ball gets into the full forward line, the more dangerous a full forward line are. So I would say, again, that Clare will come at us, and we know what Clare will bring to it. They bring a lot of passion. But probably, when you look at them, they are the next thing to Limerick. And you know. But in saying that, they had a very, very tough game in the Munster final. Well, 2 weeks is long enough for to get over that. It's a pity that these two suspensions are coming up. It's probably going to dampen the game a bit as regards the lead up to it, because that's what most of the talk is going to be about. Whereas it should be about the game of hurling, and all those guys should be on the field on the day of the match.
Yeah. Do you remember Conor McDonald when he was first coming through in Nevena? Was there like? It's amazing that it's 2013 that he made his senior debut for Wexford, and he's still only 26. But do you first remember when he came on the scene and you started thinking, geez, we have a bit of a player here?
I would have first remembered Conor when he was about 9 years of age. And funny enough, at 9 years of age, you could pick him out with his ability to catch a ball. He was 9, 10 years of age. We would have been playing tournaments now, and would have been invited to, and would have had one our own, or we would have been running our own tournament here in the town, and would have been inviting teams from Dublin, Kilkenny, Wexford, and he would have been standout small individual at that time. But you know, he was pretty handy boxer as well, so he would have been in the boxing club here as well. But his hurling ability and his ability to fetch a ball in the air, even at a young age, like he played minor, under 21, and senior in the 1 year, and he actually scored in both minor, under 21, and senior. And that, for an 18-year-old, you know, tells you that there was something special coming through, and he is, and like he does get a lot of, you know, a lot of marking coming into games, and he's well-minded, you'd have to say. But you know, sometimes maybe the frustration would come. You can see it in a lot of players when that happens. But I think he's both him, and we're lucky to have that. We have 3 forwards in the caliber of Lee Chin, Conor McDonald, and Rory O'Connor, and even, you know, Oisin Foley yesterday done some lovely things, and we have some younger players coming as well. It's a big game for Wexford. I have to be honest with you. There will be a serious crowd in Thurles, and it's great to see that, and it's great to see that that's what the game of hurling generates, and that's what is the game of hurling. Not to look more at the negative things that are happening in the game, but the positive things that are happening in the game of hurling, and what I can do, and what it's going to bring to next Saturday as regards sports is just brilliant.
Yeah, and do you think that, like, sometimes a team just has to strike while an opportunity presents itself? Like, it's 2013, that All-Ireland qualifier that was in Thurles. Wexford lost to Clare that year. Clare went on and win the All-Ireland. Funnily enough, that was also Conor McDonald's debut when I think he was still just a teenager. But, like, from your own experience as well, like, some years the thing opens up in front of you, and like you just have to strike, because the other thing is this Wexford team, those players you name, a lot of them are at their peak now. Macho O'Hanlon as well, Foley, or what's his name, Foley, is Paddy Foley, centre back. Maybe the opportunity will just open up at some stage this year, and like you did before, you have to strike.
Yeah, you'd like to think that, and you know, the way the year started first with the draw against Galway and them being beaten by Dublin. And then, you know, they would have got a lot of criticism for the Westmeath. And again, you know, Westmeath, Kerry, Antrim, these are due respect every time you go to play them. We would have played Westmeath in minor going back to 2000, maybe 16, 17, and they come down to Wexford and they beat us at minor. So, you know, people were saying, you know, Wexford going up to Westmeath. Westmeath deserved their draw on the day. And everyone thinks, like, you know, the way it was looked at, it was a Wexford after being beaten, but that draw actually put us through. We were going to always have to get a result against Kilkenny for to get through anyway, but that draw actually put us through. So I just tell you the way things work out, that it looked to be in a very, very negative, you know, result, when actually the draw we got was a very positive result for to put us in a position for to beat Kilkenny and qualify.
Billy, you have a lot of lads hurling well at the moment, coming into a quarter final. I think Matt O'Hanlon's having an absolutely super year. Damien Rex absolutely flying. Liam Ryan, I believe, was brilliant at the weekend. And when you go, and Dermot O'Keefe playing very well too, among many others. But when you go up in attack, and you mentioned those 3 lads up front, particularly Chin, O'Connor, and McDonald, you know, if you have a fighting chance going in against anybody on a given day when those lads are playing as they are. Like, I'd imagine, I don't say you're waiting in the long grass at the weekend, but you have to kind of half fancy your chances. And as Shane says there, sometimes opportunities just arise and you need to kick down that door.
Yeah, and I would agree with you on the names that you mentioned there as regards the way they're hurling this year. And I think a lot of that goes down to Dara Egan. It's his first year as manager, and he's had some very positive results both in the league and now in the championship as well, and his backroom team. So, everything doesn't go right in the first year for you, certainly, and you have to, there's problems that you see in teams, and I think he's working it out very well. This is definitely, anytime you come into a quarter final down in Thurles, not a great play, it's been a graveyard for Wexford in a lot of years, but and you were saying positivity, why you'd have to say that we're coming at the right time. I think Clare have showed something as well, that it could be their year as well. I know that Limerick are that step ahead of Clare. Then maybe we have the likes of Cork, who will probably have a say in it, Galway. Any one of the teams that are playing next Saturday could make the breakthrough for maybe get into an All-Ireland final. You never know in the year is given. Limerick are, as I say, that step above the rest, and rightly so, over the way they're playing, the way they're able to conduct themselves as regards, what they have to do in a game for to come through victorious. And we probably still have to learn some of them things. And, it's how our leaders stand up next week, and it'll probably be the same for Clare. But if we're able to, the likes of the guy who has, I think, in serious matches this year for us is Liam McGovern in around the middle of the field. And, he would have been the likes of Matt Johan and Liam Og, Dermot O'Keefe. All these are around the same age. Mark Fanning in the goal. There's a lot of years. These guys, they have a lot of experience, but they still have a lot of hurling. And if they turn up on the day, I would give us a great chance.
I'm just going to quickly give an update on the All-Ireland quarter-final draw there, Billy, if you don't mind for 1 second. So Galway have Armagh, Kerry against Mayo, Dublin against Cork, and Derry against Clare. So some of those are kind of tasty enough now. I was kind of hoping that we'd see Armagh against Dublin. I think that would be a classic game, but it's worked out the way it's worked out, and we'll talk about it a little bit more later on. Billy, are you a football man, Billy? Are you into it, actually?
I would have played football with Wexford for about 3 or 4 years, and we actually played a Dublin team in 1983 in the first round of the championship. A fairly good year for Dublin, and they beat us in every way up in Crow Park, and that was when I decided maybe hurling was the game for me, to be honest with you. But that was a serious Dublin team. I would have had some good years with the Wexford jersey in the football. We would have been in Division 2, and we met some great friends, still friends of mine, and the game of football would still be fairly close to me. We would have trained our own team here in both hurling and football as regards underage, and I like the game of football, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Was that the year that Dublin's Dirty Dozen beat Galway with 12 men in the All-Ireland final?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't call them a Dirty Dozen. There would have been a few guys on that I would have known, and nicer guys you couldn't meet. But them for about 70 minutes, they just had a different way of playing football to everyone else. But I would have played against some of them guys who played. I remember playing in a minor Leinster final in '78, and Huron, Duff, Barney, Rock. They had some serious players that came that were beaten in the minor final that year to beat us as well. But that time, Dublin, Dublin football generated something very special in the Leinster area. You have to give them great credit for what they've done for the game of football in the 70s. And a young guy coming up, and it was a pleasure to play against him. And to say you played against him, but at times playing against him wasn't a great pleasure, to be honest with
you. Could you sort of give an idea? It's just as you mentioned it there. What was the GAA like then, and what was the experiences like then versus now? Is it a very different place watching GAA and being part of it?
Oh, it is for sure. It's gone more professional. I mean, at that time, back in the 80s was a tough time in Ireland in itself, because a lot of people, a lot of good footballers and hurlers were actually leaving these shores. And it wasn't because they wanted to go; it was because there was no opportunities there for them as regards employment. And back in 80, I think it was 83, I would have got a green card myself for the go abroad, but didn't go. I actually ended up being on the Wexford hurling team, and from there on, I decided to stay at home. But at that time, definitely the professionalism that came into the game and the way guys have to keep themselves basically so physically fit and right at all times now has definitely changed. But it was a game I loved. Both games, I loved playing them. It was very, very hard at that time even to play as a dual player to play both, because you were trying to train. You were playing at that time. The leagues were played a bit during the winter, coming into say the spring of the year, and you would have been playing basically every weekend. And there was some brilliant you'd have to say dual players at the time, but it's gone a thing now that you see you just don't have the time for to be involved in both as a club maybe, but certainly as an inter-county, the day of dual players finished and gone, which is a pity.
Can you talk a little bit more about being a young man, at that era? Because I remember Larry Tompkins, he went abroad for a couple of years as well, and he'd come back then to play for Cork. So, it could have been very different. That was an era when, high unemployment, that sort of thing, was probably very difficult for a young man. So you actually went ahead and got the green card, but just never actually headed out.
Yeah, never headed out. Yeah, got the green card, and just you didn't want to go abroad, to be honest with you. Especially when involved in the sporting scene, which I was at the time, and I had a young family as well. So, and you just didn't want to head out there. There was opportunities, and some of the guys that actually played on that football team with me went and played on that minor team, went and got very successful. You'd meet them every so often when they come home, but they were a big. They were a big part of your community, and it was sad to see him going. It was a sad time as regards that in Ireland, but definitely the GAA would have been part, and a very positive part of my life at that time, and probably the same for a lot of young guys that employment just wasn't there for at the time. So, I have a lot to basically be appreciated for the game that I love so much, but it definitely would have helped me get through bad times in that end of it in Ireland, and as regards the sport itself, we would have had some great times at that. I remember probably at that time I was lucky enough to come on a Wexford team as a young guy to play with some of the heroes that would have been there in 76 and 77, the likes of Mick Jacob, Martin Quigley, Tony Dorn. I played with these, and as a 14, 15-year-old, seeing these coming through and end up being playing with them was definitely something I cherished at the time and still cherish it.
Billy, I'm just wondering, you're talking about 1983 there, and I'm like, when I think I think of 96 and 97. When did you start with Wexford? And it must have been the guts of 20 years playing with Wexford between hurlers and footballers, right?
Yeah, I started playing with the footballers in 1980. We had a pretty good minor team, and then we had a good under-21 team in football at that time, and came on to the senior team, and came on to the hurling team then in 83. So I was in a lot of years in both playing both hurling and football, but concentrated on the football. Then starting in 83, 84 was the centenary year. So I decided 84 was the year that I was going to put everything into the hurling, and from there on was asked to go back into football maybe a few times, but didn't, because it just didn't really have the time, But it's a long time ago, but I have some great memories and made some very, very good friends. Even the other day I was at a communion, and I was talking. This guy came over to me, and he shook my hand. He said, "You haven't changed a bit." And it was actually Kieran Brennan. We beat him, and they were going for 3 in a row in 84, and we beat him in, I think Noah Scheme was going for his 9th All-Ireland, but Tony Dorn scored a goal in the last minute in 84 at Rockcrow Park, and it just he said, "I never forgive you for that one," and just had a chat with him. He was a brilliant hurler at the time, and just like the big thing for them that year was it was the centenary year, and they wanted to be in. They were going for 3 in a row. It wasn't the 3 in the row. It was the fact that the All-Ireland was going to be played in Thurles, and they wanted to be in it. And Wexford beat him in the first round. So I had a great chat with him. And it's nice to do them things, and it's nice to be part of a game that means so much to the people of Ireland.
Were you hanging on, Billy, by the time Liam Griffin came along? Like, did you I think I read somewhere, like, were you thinking about packing up even in 96?
I had packed up in 94 as a and I was brought. There was a small bit of a rumpus down in Nolan Park in Dublin and Wexford I think it was the Leinster semi-final, and there was a few Wexford guys sent off and they were suspended. Just bringing that suspension and all that crack up again. But I think that was decided actually for that 70 minutes, and then Tom Dempsey was sent off, and George O'Connor was sent off, and Eamon Scanlon was carried off, and there was a few Dublin lads sent off, and there was a request sent back out to me would I come back into the panel, and it was a bit of a standoff, because at the time and when I left the panel, it wasn't on the most friendliest terms at the time. But anyway, I remember I was asked to go training that Tuesday, and I said I wasn't going back, and I got another phone call And I said, yeah, I'll go back. So I was out with my father, sitting down having a cup of tea that Wednesday evening. And my father said, he's going down training tomorrow night. I don't know. He says, I think you better. And I said, why do you think that now? He says, because you're named on the paper a full forward for Sunday. So I decided then I'd go back. So I went back in 94, and we were beaten, awfully beat us in the Leinster final. And in 95 then, I always believed that the team we had was an exceptionally good team. Hurling-wise, definitely, we're as good as any. Our mental side of it was that we had never made a breakthrough, and it wasn't really till we made that breakthrough. But I always felt that the talent was there. And in fairness to Liam Griffin, he was the same. And he rang me and asked me would I stay on, that he wanted me to be part of the setup. And I knew, just talking to him on the end, I'd spoke to him a few times before, and how passionate he was about the game of hurling. And he was not the kind of a guy that you find it easy to say no to if he asked you to do anything, to be honest with you, because of his passion for the game and basically the way he treats people. He treats people with a lot of respect, and he did certainly. He treated me that way, and I always felt part of a great setup. And I was delighted for not only for myself, but a lot of the older guys on the team, because they had some very, very good young lads that came through, and they probably were the ones, the likes of the Damien Fitzhenrys, the Paul Codds, the Gary Laffins, the Rory McCarthy's, Larry O'Brien. These guys came on to really give a hand to the likes of the George O'Connor, Martin Story, Tom Dempsey, and these guys. And they came together very, very well. And in fairness to Liam, he brought them with the effort and the amount of work that had to go in to turn that around from being a negative feeling to a positive feeling. And the way he done it was exceptional, and it was so professional. And I think that was the one thing that Liam brought to a setup. Probably we would have seen it the year before with Clare, what they were able to do, but the professionalism Liam brought him, the things he done to really get people thinking right about the game of hurling, what they needed to do to get across that line was exceptional.
And I also think of because you were a veteran player by the time you were 36 by the time you won the All-Ireland.
Sorry.
I'm not sure, that must have dropped there for a second, I think. I'm just thinking about, the veteran players that Liam kept together. You were, I guess you were 36 when you were winning that All-Ireland. George O'Connor would have been, give or take, the same. And I remember having George O'Connor in for a training session with Coola around 2015 or whatever. And the way he held court, I was thinking, geez, can you imagine this lad in a dressing room? If you're about to go to war, I'd say he would give some serious speeches. So having that experience in the dressing room, the likes of yourself and George must have been huge for getting over the line.
I was, to be honest with you, and just looking at that red jersey there. I remember we were playing 1993, I think it was, in the league game down in Park Equive, and half time was a fairly tough out game now between ourselves and Cork, and there was a little man to play centre back with us. It would have been the smallest guy on the field, but he had a heart of a lion. But you were getting a bit of hardship in the forwards, and Christy Keogh was over, and Christy gave his speech at half time, and we were coming out, and before we went out, this little man closed the door and he turned around, and the exact words he said was, he said, if our forwards are going to get hardship down that end of the field, well, their forwards are going to get some hardship down our end of the field. And fairness to him, he stood by his word, and he always did, and he was probably one of the best hurlers I was lucky enough to play with, and that was Liam Dunn. His mantle was that he played for the jersey that he wore, and he gave everything for it. And that was part of that team probably starting to come together. That these guys, the likes of Liam Dunn coming along, the likes of, say, even, Larry O'Gorman, Larry just believed he was the best, and sure, we have to tell him he was the best. But he was some individual hurler, but Liam was a real general for the size of him, but what he could do with a hurl was just magical.
Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, no, the one thing you're after rolling back some amount of memories there, Billy, but I just have to chat to you quickly about obviously 96 is seriously remembered, but that 1-2 cameo in 97, I think you're on the field 10 minutes and you ended up getting man of the match. And I'll never forget, as a young fella, I'd never seen anybody bounce the ball off the ground like you did that day. Can you just roll back to that day? That must have been unbelievable. Like, people dream it's real rider over stuff, coming in off the bench, scoring 1-2, getting a man of the match. I think you got a watch out of it as well, and you beat Kilkenny. Like, what more could you want?
Well, the big thing that year was that we won the Leinster final again, probably one of the best teams in '96 in the Offaly team. But for the winning Leinster final for a Wexford person, you had to beat Kilkenny in it, and that's what the lead up to that really was. And again, I knew what I was asked when you took off your tracksuit for the done, and Liam had me tuned that way that I felt when you feel good as a sub, you don't have a chip on your shoulder. You need something to get you going. Liam was able to do that, and he was able to do it in the right manner. And when I was brought on at that time, it was more or less any ball that a half back line or midfield, the likes of Adrian or anyone got, was to come in, and it was come in fast and high. And that was basically, that was just the tactic at the time when I came on. And lucky enough that I think we got it free, and they were bringing me on, and Liam Dunn was bending down to take it, and I said to Liam, you may give me a few minutes to get down here. And he was hitting it at the half back, and when he hit it, like, he wasn't going for the point, he was actually dropping it in the square. And I went to catch it in actually my right hand. I usually catch it in the left, and it fell in front of me, made a kick at it. And that was probably my footballing skills. I know you didn't believe me that I played a bit of football, but that was the football skill that came out. It took me a long time to bring that skill out, but it was nice to get that score. And once you do that, the confidence, any ball that came in, then you felt you were going to be honest with you. And we had, I think, probably the turning point of that was a long-range free under the holding stand. Paul Codd stood up to take it, and he drove it straight between the posts. It was a little bit probably further back than the one Joe Canning got in the All-Ireland, and that was what turned the whole thing as regards, the score that we really needed. That was probably the score I thought that started to change that game as a whole that day. And once with the confidence we had from the year before, once we got into our groove, I think we were always going to win it. And
do you wear the watch at all, Billy?
We wouldn't wear it off, and I tell you a good story about that though. I was up at the boxing, the amateur boxing All Irelands up in the National Stadium, and sure, I had a few gonkers of Heineken in me, but Jimmy McGee was there, and I had met Jimmy a few times before, and a bit of a chat. And Jimmy being known as the memory man, but there's a guy in Gorey here, and he always had a great saying. He said, "I'll ask you two questions. The greatest hurler you ever saw, and why was I?" This is what he used to say. So Jimmy McGee was coming in, and I was saying, "Jimmy, I have two questions for you. The greatest hurler you ever saw, and why was I?" And Jimmy looked at me and said, "Billy Byrne," he said, "you are the greatest hurler I ever saw for 7 minutes."
What a response.
I just have to say a fair play to him. And we had a great crack after, but an absolute gentleman and a really good character. He brings out the best in anyone at that time, but just fond memories of that. But no, I still have to watch all right.
Who were the players that who was the best player of the year that you appreciated the most, both players you played with and against?
I'd say, look at pound for pound, the best hurler I played against, and I was lucky enough to play with him, was DJ. There was something very, very special about him. No matter when he got the ball, there was only one thing on his mind, and that was to get the score that everyone wants to see, a goal. And he would have turned matches, and I know there have been some brilliant hurlers since and everything, but he was the best I've ever seen. And I still stand by it. I was lucky enough to play with Tony Dorn, and he was the king in hurling. I was, as I say, a DJ Brian Whelan again. His mastery with the hurlers was just something else. And all them, Owen Kelly, I was lucky enough maybe at the end of it to meet him a few times. I thought he was a brilliant hurler for Tipperary, absolutely brilliant, and up there with the best. But in my time, the likes of John Fenton would have been serious as well, and all of these players. Funny enough, as a young guy coming up, there was a lad by the name of Pat Kerry that used to hurl with Limerick. That's a long time ago, but he used to have the Doc Martin boots, and he was a hurler that I was only young lad. He would have been a little bit older than me, but loved him as a player, loved the way he played, and just small. It's not a player that would stand out to a lot of other county players, but he was a player that stood out for me. Light and white, like to have that long hair and all that, and he had a different way of going about him. Sometimes it wasn't seen as a a great thing in the GA to have long hair and an earring and you're playing. But that was the way I liked the game, and just there was different players that I would have liked and I would have seen playing that I would have sort of been lucky enough to meet and play with.
Do you know, I'm just looking at the All-Irelands that Wexford have won, and 1968, that would have been the first one after maybe, well, there was one the year you were born, but obviously you wouldn't remember that one. Do you remember the one in 1968? And I mean, this was an era when Jack Berry scored a couple of goals in the final, and also Tony Dorn, who you'd end up playing with, but you were only 8 years of age. I suppose, were you at that game?
I wasn't at it. I remember we would have lived about a mile outside of the town of Gorey, and I remember walking in to Gorey with my father. He was going to it, and then walking in when the game was over for to meet my father coming back off the train, and that's what you done then. But listening to it on the radio would have been, and at the time I thought this Mick Roach at Tipperary was the greatest. Like, the two players that really stood out for me in that All-Ireland, listening to it on the radio, Mick Roach just seemed to be everywhere, and when he hit it, Dan Quigley just seemed to be everywhere for Wexford. And I saw Mick Roach a few times after, a complete athlete, one of the best hurlers that I've ever listened to or saw. And they were the two characters that would have stood out in that game for me. Tony Dorn scoring the goal. I mean, Tony Dorn lives outside the town here, maybe a couple of miles outside the town, would be a rival club to ourselves. But what he done for Wexford, and what he, you know, when I say I was lucky enough to play with him, I was lucky enough to see him as well do things for Wexford, to drag him maybe 6 or 7 points down, to drag him to get a result, maybe winning by a point. But the respect he held, but the 68 would have had a big influence on what you thought about the sport and where you wanted to be. Like, you dreamt of putting the Wexford jersey on and trying to emulate some of the things that they had done, and you don't see it happening, but when you look at the effort that goes into having to try and do that, but it was well worth it in the end. And I was a very, very happy man that day that the whistle blew in '96 to get what really you dream about doing from the time you're a 4 or 5 year old.
And when you think back on listening to matches on the radio, like that, it just, what a different era, a different world that was.
Oh, it was a complete. But what it done, like, it really, it generated something inside you that you just want to be part of. And that's what Micheál O'Hare at the time was able to do. That's what Micheál Murray was able to do. That's what a lot of it, even now you have it, that you like, and I'm sort of involved in Southeast Radio and doing some of the games now, but the likes of, we'd have Liam Spratt down here, and the same, that excitement that they're able to generate through voice more so than picture is something very, very special, and I hope it never goes away. I know television is great to have it and everything, but the voice on radio can do something very, very special to someone, especially someone away from home even. You know, a lot of people, I remember in '96, a lot of people would contact me and saying, look, I'm in Australia, I was listening to the game, it's just broke down in tears. These sort of things that people be telling you that happen, and you can feel it yourself, because you would have felt that way at times, you know, listening as a young boy and even older, even now. I remember being in Croatia listening to, I think it was 2 years ago when we played Kilkenny in Wexford Park, and Wexford Park was rocking. And I was away on holidays. It couldn't have been, but I was away on holidays and listening to it on the radio, and the excitement that it brings is something very, very special, and it's something that's very dear to the game of hurling and football in Ireland.
Yeah, Michael?
Billy, I just have to ask you, because you brought him up, what's your best Liam Spratt story?
So many of there's a book in this, it doesn't, everything comes off the cuff. Like, if it's not wrote down in front of him, it just comes off the cuff. But there is some very, very good individual, we say, characters as regards, we say, local radio commonly, and anyone could at any given time he's liable to either bury you, and he doesn't know he's burying you, or he'll ask you a question that's going to bury you, and you still have to answer it. And he'd say after, I shouldn't have asked her. You'll be all right. Don't worry about it. It'll be all right. No one probably heard it. The whole parish is probably listening to what he said. But no, he's a character. He's good for the game down here, to be honest with you. And you know, when he takes up the microphone, as I say, it comes off the cuff. So you wouldn't want to be too put out by what he says at times, but he's good for the game down here, and he gives us something very, very exciting when you haven't got it on television that you can listen to that. And it does bring everything very close to home as well.
Tom Dempsey told me a story a couple of years ago. I can't remember it fully, but it was something to the tune of they used to ring Tony Doran, I think the day before, a couple of days before an All-Ireland final, just to talk to the great Tony Doran. Now, I know he is, as he said, he's a rival club up the road, but were you ever part of that? Were you aware of that going on?
Well, I was lucky enough to be in the dressing room with Tony on one or two occasions, and again, there's a voice. His voice is just it carries some weight, and I can understand why Buffer's Alley won so many matches that you thought they were going to lose, because and Tom would be, and I would be the same. He comes from our district and he's one of ours. That's the way we'd look at him, even though when we're playing again it was completely different. But he just commands so much respect, and when he talks, and he talks about the game of hurling, he talks from the heart and what it really means to him, and you can feel that in him. And that's why, no matter, Tom would have been in a lot of situations that he definitely would have rang Tony for advice, and Tony would have put him straight where he needs to be, and Tom would be the first one to tell you that, and would have, as a player myself, would, you know, when he said something, his stature just carried so much that it really made you do the things that you thought you weren't possible to do. And that's what the likes of a Tony Doran can do, a Liam Griffin can do, the likes of it, you know, these guys that are able to get people to respond when they really need to respond, and definitely Tony was one of those.
So if we're to move on to this weekend, the big thing I suppose for Wexford is, do they have somebody to try and lock down Tony Kelly? A couple of years ago, Matt O'Hanlon was tried, and I think that wasn't the right size profile. I mean, Matt Hanlon's a big guy going up against a speedster, you know, covering the length and breadth of the pitch. I didn't think it was ever going to work, and it didn't. But is locking down Tony Kelly the big thing?
I'd say locking down Tony Kelly for any team is near impossible at times. You know, we just talked about some of the great hurlers that I was lucky enough to. But this guy is something else. You know, I mean, what he does with the hurl at the speed he does it at, that's what makes him exceptional from anyone else that's out there on the field. You know, he can turn a game in the space of minutes, and we definitely have came up again that in the last number of years. As I say, I think the last 3 times we played Clare, this man has performed to a degree that we just weren't able to handle, and it is going to be one of our big Achilles heel if we don't do something about it. And with being able to do something about it, this would be one thing that if Dara Egan is able to do so, he's definitely one of the best managers that has been produced for a long time, because there's not too many managers being able to portray this man that they call Tony Kelly and what he can do. And I think we're very, very lucky to have a hurler like him that is again so positive in the way he plays the game, the way he moves, what he can do with the hurl, and the way he carries himself on the field as well. It's all about passion. And don't get me wrong, he has a physical ability about him as well, that he can take hits, he can give hits, but he's definitely an inspiration to any young lad there, not only in the county of Clare, but in the whole of Ireland, to see this guy. And I think we're very, very lucky. We've had Joe Cannings of this world as well, and we're basically the same. But these are the guys who carry this game of hurling through to another generation, and he certainly do that. But for us, it is going to be a big battle for us. Their half back line, their full back line as well, that they, like, if we were going to cut out a lot of ball going into Tony Kelly, our forwards are going to have to be put in a serious hour and 10 minutes for to try and curtail putting the ball into him and try and stop the supply that he's going to get, which is very, very hard to do. But if he's on song, we're going to be in trouble on Saturday.
But the belief must be huge in Wexford at the moment after going away to Nolan Park and winning there. I mean, especially when the team needed to. But of course, on the flip side, Clare have just taken Limerick to extra time, so they're not going to lack any belief either. I don't think belief will be I think our big point is to get over where we've been with Clare for the last number of times we played them. You know, we've seemed to start very slow, and if you start slow again, Clare, you're going to be in trouble. We will have to be going all guns blazing from the time the ball is thrown in, and mentally we're going to have to be up there before the ball is thrown in, and that is the big thing for us. Is like, Curtis has been a graveyard for Wexford in the last number of years as regards any big games,
And again, as we were able to do something about Nolan Park being a problem to us as regards getting a victory, but this is a different thing. You're stepping into a different province, never mind a different county, and we have to be able to stand up to that, and we have to be able to win our own ball and move it, and be able to put our forwards in a position that they're going to be able to take probably the green flag more often than when they get the chance. And these chances for us to beat Clare, we're going to have to score goals, and that means that we're going to have to put the ball into the likes of Conor McDonald and to Lee Chin if he's in there. But it's a game I'm looking forward to. I still think that we have it within us for to get a victory. That this team has had some very, very good victories over the last 4 or 5 years. It's not that they're not capable of getting; they're well capable of getting this victory. But it's certainly going to be a very, very tough day for them if they don't start the way they need to start against this Clare team.
Do you have many memories of playing against Clare?
Funny enough, a lot of it would have been in the league. You know, we never really met them in the championship. So when you're going back to all league matches, I never came up against Clare in the championship. So, but I would have played against them in the league, tough. And at that time, but we would have had we would have went over to, I remember going to Amsterdam ourselves, and Clare went over for an exhibition back in the early 80s. And, you know, there would have been a great friendly rivalry between ourselves and Clare. That had probably turned into a little bit more fearsome over the last number of years because of one special little man. But, you know, that thing is not there this year either. So we're going in, everything is clear. We're going in to basically represent Wexford and represent the people of Wexford. And, you know, the managers really don't come into it as much as did probably profile-wise over the last couple of years. So I'm really looking forward to it. And, you know, I think it's going to be a great day. The game before, it'll be a tough enough game again. I think there is one good game still left in Galway. I think Henry will be able to get him up for this one. So I wouldn't be able to definitely pick the winners of both games next Saturday, but it's definitely a day to look forward to.
And what was the exhibition about over in Amsterdam, and did it end up as a booze or?
Oh no, the game of hurling was definitely the winner in Amsterdam. But yeah, that's going back, I think, to the early 80s as well. You know, they were brought over. They played it on three hockey pitches. Is what I was put together. It was yeah, the game of hurling really took off in Amsterdam, I'd have to say, after that.
Oh, stop. Michael, do you want to jump in?
No, just on it, Billy, at the weekend, like it's an exciting opportunity for Wexford. And while Clare are kind of riding high and, you know, ran the All-Ireland champions to extra time, like this is not it's not, I don't know if it's a 50-50 game, but it is a very, very hard game to call. Clare are going to be a bit tired, maybe a bit down after the Munster final, potentially missing a couple of players. Your boys are probably riding high after, as Shane said there, a brilliant win in Nolan Park. The thing about the weekend, I think, is what I was most impressed with was just how professional it was, particularly after that Westmeath result. So, like, you're coming in, you're kind of coming in under the radar a small bit at the weekend, and you'll fancy your chances.
I'd say we are coming in under the radar, to be honest with you. You know, as I say, our sort of championship campaign had definitely finished on a high. Didn't start very well for us, but finished on a high, and finished on a note that you'd be able to carry yourself forward. I think the Kerry game probably came at the right time for us get a game. We needed a game before we played Clare, to be honest with you. Clare, look, one time you would have had only 1 week. You're lucky basically that would have been gas for to try and get a result together and get their heads right, both mentally and physically. I'd say 2 weeks has definitely helped them. But you know, the way Clare have, or what Clare have, definitely as a team that are capable of winning the All-Ireland, but on their day, Wexford can put in a performance that can rock anyone, and we would hope that would be Saturday.
Okay, well, look, Billy, brilliant to have you on the show today. I really appreciate you giving us your time, and look, hopefully we'll be chatting again soon.
No other. Thanks, lads. Enjoy the weekend.
Will do. Well, look, we'll be talking much more about the All-Ireland quarterfinals as we get to further on in the week. We're going to have Ciara and Kerry and Richie Power on Thursday. As you know, that show is at patreon.com/OurGame. It takes just a couple of minutes to sign up. You get match reports as well if you get the OurGame Supporters Club. Reminder, we're brought to you by orgaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame and you get 15% off. Obviously, there's a huge suite of jerseys that you can get at the website there, including these jerseys here, which are beauts. I'm sure you'll agree.
What's the odd one out in the picture, Shane?
What's the odd one out in the picture that I put up a second ago?
Yeah.
The team that's not in the championship at the moment being Tipperary.
Bang.
Yeah, pretty soundy, wasn't it? We haven't really had a chance to talk yet about Cork's victory over Antrim, 327 to 219. So anyone who didn't see this game, Cork scored 1-2 in stoppage time to pull away here, but really not that impressive a performance. So are you of a mind who says it's all about winning this game and it doesn't matter how? Or do you say, well, we need to be seeing a couple of signs that this team has a bit more about them than maybe we saw in the previous round or so on?
Well, Cork were very professional, you'd have to say. Very professional against Tipperary in the last round, very professional against Waterford the day before that. So for a team that you're not sure about and that you're not 100% sure what you're going to get off them every day, you want to see the levels kept high. So I think it was disappointing from that respect that there was a bit of a drop-off here. They probably had to answer questions during the game that, maybe, I think Kieran Kingston said that complacency maybe was in play in the first few minutes. And I just don't think that should be a case for this Cork team. I don't think they should ever be taking their eye off any challenge, and they should be treating everyone with the height of respect, just based on, I suppose, their first two games in the championship and even the last couple of years where it's been hot and cold. Listen, they got the result. There was probably part of it to do with Antrim probably fading after their Joe McDonough exploits. The 7 days involved there. Even I remember chatting to Owen Campbell. He wears 6 but plays sweeper there a good bit for them. Like he came into the media centre on about a few minutes after the McDonough Cup final, and his calves and his hamstrings were after. He thought both of them were gone. Like, this was one player, and like he obviously played again the other day, so they were feeling the effects of that. And I would have probably if I'm honest with you, I would have expected Cork potentially to do what Wexford did, as in really professional, no doubts in the game, open up a clear gap and probably, maintain it or sustain it until the finish. But they made a bit of a battle of this. Now that's a lot to do with Antrim as well. But from a Cork point of view, like, they just can't be taking their eyes off anything. They need to just keep that boot down. The work rate was probably a bit off in the first half, something that was huge in their last two games. So listen, it's really hard to know. It's really hard to know what to expect coming into that Galway game at the weekend. Kind of two teams that you don't really know what to expect from on a given day.
Yeah, it's true. Just to go through some of the scorers in this match, for Antrim, James McNaughton, he scored 1-9, 6 of those were frees. He took over the frees from Conal Cunning, who's been very consistent on them, but after scoring a few, he had also missed 3 in the first half, and McNaughton took over, which is no bother to McNaughton. He's well able to strike him over, and really good player. Keelan Malloy scored 1-3 from midfield. Now, he is a serious player, and this isn't the first time for him either to be coming up the field scoring goals and points, including one where he soloed forward, knocked it over the head of a Cork defender and put it over the bar. Conal Cunning, as I said, he scored a couple of frees. McManus got on the score sheet. So did Sean Elliott, Conor Johnson, David Carney and Paddy Burke. For Cork, Conor Lehane, he was the main man throughout this, and he was in and around centre forward a lot, floating around, getting on ball, snapping ball, just driving forward. He scored 1-9. That included a penalty, a couple of frees and a 65. Robbie O'Flynn scored 6 points. Harnedy and Darragh Fitzgibbon scored 1-3 each. Alan Connolly and Patrick Horgan both scored a couple of goals. Mark Coleman and Conor Lehane got a point each. Tim O'Mahony played full forward in place of Patrick Horgan, who Horgan came on. He tried to force the score early on when he was clearly going to get blocked down, but then scored 2 beauties just after. So he gave a reminder of what he can do, which nobody really needed anyway. Everyone knows he's not top scorer in the history of hurling for nothing. Some of the notes I made as I was watching the first half. Now, the way the game had started, Darragh Fitzgibbon scored a goal very early after a great burst from Tim O'Mahony. And then there was a penalty scored by Lehane a little while later after Tim O'Mahony had won it. And James McNaughton had scored a beautiful goal from Antrim in between. But I did write down notes saying, where's Mark Coleman here? We'd seen very little of him early on, and where was Darragh Fitzgibbon outside of the goal? We hadn't seen much of him. Now, both of them made impacts later on, but you'd expect players of that quality to be taking over a game against an opposition that's playing in a tier beneath. But to be fair to Antrim, they were playing with the wind, but they also dropped off. So Cork were playing into a wind against a team that had sat back, and they were finding it difficult to break them down. But the thing that frustrated me when I was watching Cork is the same thing that regularly frustrates me. The reason they got hammered against Limerick is they bring the ball into trouble all the time. And obviously you have to take the ball up the centre and move it up the field and get your scores and do it with variety. But what I saw is, again, they're doing stick passes, difficult stick passes, 10-yard stick passes to somebody who's running up through the centre in traffic. And it's ridiculous. When someone's in hand pass distance range, just give them a hand pass, because it's very hard to mess up that transfer of the ball. Whereas a stick pass, you often have to stop, or it comes at you quite fast, or, just give a hand pass. And I mean, I prefer seeing long deliveries. We all love the 50-50 ball. But there's a reason that Limerick win so often, and it's because they know how to use the ball. They don't hand pass all the time, but they hand pass when it's right, and they stick pass when it's right. The other thing is, Cork don't deliver the ball into the danger area. They deliver it out towards the sideline or out towards the flanks or the 45. Like, how often are players picking up the ball on the edge of the D, the way Aaron Gallant, for example, does, and then he just has to turn and pop or turn and go for goal. So those were the things that frustrated me that I saw from Cork. Fine, maybe they weren't up against an All-Ireland contender and they weren't 100% at it. But there's little things like that, use of the ball, turning it over for, in silly situations, that I'm thinking, well, this is going to be the rock that they're determined to perish on later down the line as well.
Yeah, that short stick passing in those really confined areas, when you're still in a defensive position despite having the ball, is very frustrating to watch. And Limerick absolutely hammered them in that respect. Like, I don't want to see hand passing the whole time, but there are times in the game when you just give a hand pass. If someone is 10 or 15 yards away, it's a simple thing to do. As you say, it's very foolproof, really. There's nothing, it's just a hand pass. And it's up here and it's easy to catch and you go again. Stick pass, it could be a bad pass. It's so much easier to miss the ball even from a stick pass as well. So it's just strange maybe that they're persistent with that in those areas of the field. But probably partly to do with Cork, but we do need to give a big kudos to Antrim, and I think this is a really good sign. Their last two league campaigns have been really good signs, I suppose, as well, of what they could potentially do in Leinster next year. They've obviously beaten Clare up in Corrigan Park. They've beaten they drew Wexford up in Corrigan Park last year. They've been really competitive over the last couple of years, and I think they'll be competitive in Leinster again. The age profile of the team is very good. I don't see anybody moving on in the next couple of years. Maybe Neil McManus in a couple of years, but the thoughts of playing Leinster hurling, I'm sure next year will keep him going for at least next year and potentially beyond. But they're definitely building something nice and competitive. And it won't be just Westmeath that they'll be looking at getting a result against in Leinster next year. They'll feel there's potential to get a result even, against a couple of other teams in there as well.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the start of the second half, playing against the wind. Antrim really struggled to get the ball out, and Cork just started scoring at their ease. They scored 9 of their first 10 shots in the second half, which gave Antrim a huge... And Antrim went in ahead at half-time, but it just gave them a massive hill to climb, which they weren't able to do. So in the 66th minute, I kind of had an asterisk beside it here. James McNaughton had a free 55 metres, give or take, on the left, and he put it wide, and he put it well wide. And I think that just that would have brought it back to 4 points. And I think that was just kind of the death knell for him at that point. Now, as I said, he had a really, really good game. I'm not putting it down to him, but there was just something about that where you were like, yeah, it's probably not going to happen at this stage. Because if they had to score a couple of points or a goal, it was very much on. And then just the last couple of minutes, as I said, it was a 1-2 burst from Cork really late on in the game. And that goal that Seamus Harnedy scored at the end was just brilliant stuff from Jack O'Connor, who, if you go back to the game against Cork and Thurles, and I think that was that sort of a wintry day? Was it sort of raining that day? I'm just struggling to remember one game from the next, but it was a fairly physical day, and the inside forwards trying to win ball that day were Patrick Horgan and Jack O'Connor. Now with the weather getting, that bit, the ground getting that bit firmer, Jack O'Connor coming on should start to have more of an impact. He must have been a 70 or 80 yard run, flicked the ball over a lad's head, beautiful stick pass across, and Seamus Harnedy scored. Like, he's going to be more important now as the game goes on. What do you make of Kieran Kingston taking off his son Shane in the first half? I mean, that's just the reality of it, that his son is on the team. But, geez, I think he's hard enough on his own son at times.
Yeah, I often just think that with Colin Collins and Podge in the football as well. He was decent the other day in the football. Podge was. He kicked a lovely point. He kicked it probably a bad wide, and I was kind of thinking there might be no mercy here. There doesn't seem to be any mercy from them. Kingston over the last 2 days, whatever about his scoring, it had been his work rate that had really kind of set him apart. He's setting a tone. I remember him tracking the whole way down the sideline in Thurles to get in a hook against Tipperary last day. And if that is off in any way, I think it's probably Kingston making a bit of a statement. Like, it doesn't matter who we're playing on a given day. If you're not working, if you're not doing what we want you, the basics of what we want you to do, forget about scoring, we'll pull you off. And that's what happened the other day. But it was kind of indicative of Cork's performance early doors, even just that they were a bit off, and what had helped them get those 2 big results the previous days was probably not on show the other day. But it's pretty ruthless. The only thing I'd say about Chittenden Kingston is it's probably a good thing for Cork and a bad thing for Galway. He probably won't start the next day, and he'd probably come in and do what he does off the bench. Because, like, I think did he get 4-9 last year off? He was top scorer in the championship last year, I think, and most of that was off the bench, including those 7 points against Kilkenny. So he mightn't like it, but maybe that is his best role too. And you could be left with a bench where you potentially have 2 forwards, 2 of Manny coming in, him and Patrick Horgan both coming in off the bench. And if you're looking for impact, and if you're looking for subs to strengthen your team potentially, you definitely say those 2 boys do that anyway.
I'd say Shane Kingston would want to hit you a clip if he heard you saying that. Let's do a bit of a power rankings here, because we did have someone message us asking us to update it. This was our most recent one on the left here. We had Limerick number 1, Clare, Galway, Cork, Kilkenny. 6 were Wexford, 7th Waterford, Tip, Dublin, Westmeath, Antrim, Laois and Kerry. So I suppose we can go through some of this quite quickly and just have Limerick at number 1 once again. There's no question about that. Clare number 2. Now it gets interesting from here. Who's your next team?
Yeah, well, Limerick and Clare is fine. We won't have any debate there. Yeah, tough. Well, Galway definitely aren't number 3 anyway. I can't have Cork number 3 either, probably at the moment. Kilkenny are in an All-Ireland semi-final and won a hat-trick of Leinster titles. Do I think they'll... It's
not so long ago that we had them around 7th or something like that.
Yeah. Do I think they'll be in an All-Ireland final? I probably don't. Is that essentially what you're looking at? Well, saying that, I think the All-Ireland final pairing is what we have 1 and 2. So it's a bit of a Glenn Quagmire underneath that. Yeah,
but Clare could get caught between suspensions. Who knows about injuries? Just mentally trying to turn it around since the Munster final. I do think they're number 2. It's just I wouldn't be 100% guaranteed they're going to get to the All-Ireland.
Boom, boom, 43. Number 3 still Waterford, even though they didn't get through.
I'll have Tip at 4, so if that's the way, boom, boom.
Yeah. Listen.
Look, Cork beat Kilkenny in the All-Ireland semi-final last year. They beat them in the semi-final of the league this year. They came through a much tougher province.
They did, just about. Kilkenny won a weaker province.
Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah, but it's not as if they both finished 3rd in, the Kilkenny finished 3rd in Leinster. Kilkenny won Leinster. You can say that they won a weaker province, but they won it, whereas Cork were 3rd in a stronger province. If Cork had gotten to a final, maybe you'd have them ahead of them.
Well, let's put it this weekend. Look, we'll review them or preview them later in the week, but I think, are you suspecting that it'll be 2 Munster wins this week?
I'm just not sure about Cork. I do think Clare will win. Cork, Galway. Listen, I'd probably be stumping for Galway. As you know, I still don't have much faith in Cork. That's why I wouldn't be putting Cork 3. I'd have Kilkenny 3.
I think Kilkenny deserve 3 at the moment, even though I think all 3 Munster teams might beat them at the moment. But look, that can change too.
Yeah, I'd probably have Cork 4 then.
I would have Cork 4, and I'd have. By dint of the draw, would you have Galway or Wexford next? Well, when they met in the championship already this year, it was a draw, but Galway definitely played far more to hurling that day.
Who do you fancy? Who do you fancy more to get through the weekend? Or Galway or Wexford? I think Wexford have a shout at the weekend.
I think both teams have a shout, because I just don't know how this is all going to impact Clare, what's going on at the moment. So I'm actually struggling to call both of them. Maybe I just haven't had enough time to really weigh them up just yet.
Yeah. Keep
the comments coming in, folks, by the way. Let us know what you think. And more so, not just where you think teams should be, but why. Like Sean O'Sullivan here, given Liam is coming back next year, he'll feel he's figured out what went wrong and the back in the team. We will be back with a bang next year. That's relating to Waterford.
Yeah, and Sean O'Sullivan also says, can KFK find a way to win against a better team on paper? Does John Milan love his county? No, it's a fair point. Yeah,
they do wear teams down. Yeah, to be fair,
they do tend to wear teams down. And they obviously wore Galway down in the Leinster final. It's probably a bit of an overreaction to have. Galway were terrible in the Leinster final. There's no point in saying any difference. Maybe they were too bad to be true, or maybe it's all Galway's old failings coming home to roost again. But I'd probably still have them ahead of Wexford. Like, I'll put it to you this way: do I think Galway could potentially put it up to Limerick on a given day? Well, they did only 2 years ago. Can they now?
Time's moved on. Life's moved on since that game.
But I still think they're a better team than Wexford. And I think they have better options than Wexford.
Oh, okay. I'll put it to you this way. Who has the better forwards? Would you rather have Lee Chin, Conor McDonald, Rory O'Connor, or would you rather have the assembled forwards for Galway, who outside of Conor Whelan did nothing in the Leinster final?
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. You're going in hard against Galway. You're going in hard today.
The Matties.
Yeah, the Wexford is a funny one. I kind of have a bit of belief in Wexford coming into this weekend, and do you know
what's a good stat for you? I just came up with this one over the weekend. Since they won, and I know these games are in Semple Stadium, so it's kind of beside the point in a way. But since Galway won the All-Ireland, they've played 8 championship games at Croke Park. And viewers, get your answers in if you want to answer before Verney here. We'll flash it up on the screen. How many championship games have Galway won at Croke Park out of 8 fixtures since winning the All-Ireland in 2017?
Oh, beaten in the 2020 Leinster final, beaten in the 2020 All-Ireland semi-final, beaten in the 2021 Leinster semi-final, beaten in the 2022 Leinster final. That's 4 that they've won. Who have they beaten? Yeah, I'm just trying to think who they've actually... 2018, they drew with Clare in Croke Park in 2018. They drew with Kilkenny. Have they won any? Well,
would you want the answer?
I'm just trying to think. That's 6 of the 8 games we've covered so far, I think. The other one they played, Waterford beat them in Thurles last year.
To be fair, you're doing pretty well here. This is some good memory stuff going on.
They have only played 1 game there this year, yeah?
Yeah, against Kilkenny.
What's the game I'm leaving out? I don't know if they've won a game, have they?
They have won 1 game at Croke Park in Championship since winning the All-Ireland. That was against Wexford. Remember when they hammered them? Shane O'Neill was manager in 2020.
Oh, yes. They won by forgotten game. I wouldn't have remembered
points.
the game. Definitely wouldn't remember.
Okay, so they've played 8 games and won 1 there in Championship since winning the All-Ireland. That's a fair reflection of where Galway have gone. So just to go through it, they drew with Kilkenny in 2018, won the replay in Thurles. Drew with Clare in 2018, won the replay in Thurles, which is a funny quirk. Lost to Limerick there in 2018 in the All-Ireland, beat Wexford. Then they've lost 4 games in a row in Croke Park against Kilkenny, Limerick, Dublin and Kilkenny again. So that kind of tells you there, as A Sully 180, your buddy says, wow. It's really, really poor. And I suppose the flip side then is Cork haven't won too many games up there either. I think that wasn't the victory against Kilkenny last year, which was after extra time. So in a way, you could say it was a draw. They hadn't won there since 2013, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was. Wexford haven't won a game in Croke Park since the 2019 Leinster final, have they?
I wouldn't think so. And then, of course, Clare haven't won a game at Croke Park in Championship since 2013.
Yeah, and the Clare footballers hadn't won a championship game in Croke Park in 108 years before the other day.
Hey, who else can we slate here? Teams who don't win at Croke Park. So yeah, that's what you're coming up against. And do you know, Cork and Galway haven't played each other since the 2015 All-Ireland quarter-final at Croke Park when Johnny Glynn stayed going, and sure, look, I'll stay going again. And you know, they haven't played in that long, which is kind of a strange one. But anyway,
Sean O'Sullivan makes a great point here, and I think it's a great point outside of the top couple of teams. It's mad how unpredictable hurling is. Tip were All-Ireland winners 3 years ago. This year they couldn't buy a draw. Like it's
Sean,
mad.
leave it so, Sean, will you?
It's mad, but it's kind of mad outside of Limerick. You kind of know what you're going to get on a given day. Clare are becoming like way more consistent. Obviously, you wouldn't be 100% sure on Cork. You wouldn't be 100% sure on Galway. If madly, the one team you would have been nearly sure of what you get on a given day would have been Kilkenny, and then they had an absolute no-show against Wexford in that last game in Nolan Park, and then they turn it around and win Leinster. As I predicted the day after, I must say, I said the one thing is for sure is that Kilkenny win Leinster, and then they go and produce that in the Leinster final and won. I listen. I probably still have Galway ahead of Wexford.
Yeah, Cathal O'Halloran says, by that logic, how many matches have Galway won in Thurles since then? I don't know, Cathal. I haven't done that research just yet, but they've probably won a couple. Actually, I had a Wexford supporter on to me recently saying that Thurles is not a good venue for them traditionally, that they lose a lot of games there. But they did beat Cork there in 2016. Remember that game? Yeah, it was the first time they'd beaten Cork in the championship since, I don't know, Jesus was a boy or something like that.
They got hammered. They got hammered by Waterford the week after now, in fairness. I remember Limerick giving them a fair bait in an All-Ireland quarter-final there a few years ago as well.
Okay, so you still want Galway number 5. So we've Limerick, Clare.
Can I be honest with you?
Go on, for once.
I actually like the look of Wexford more than Galway at the moment.
So we're agreed.
I've been perfectly honest.
Okay, and then are we going with Galway then at 6? We have to by dentist in the championship.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can really change anything after that, unless you want to change the order of Antrim, Laois, Kerry. Do Kerry go ahead of Laois?
Kerry are still going to be... they're both going to be operating in McDonagh next year, actually.
So what do you think?
Oh, I was happy that I got the one up on you that Antrim had to go 11 ahead of... You tried to put Laois ahead of Antrim the last day.
What is it? What are these character assassinations about today? Okay, so just go through it anyway for someone who's listening to the audio podcast later. Limerick, Clare, Cork, Kilkenny, Cork, Wexford 5, Galway, Waterford, Tipperary. 9th are Dublin, 10th Westmeath, and then 11, 12, 13 are Antrim, Laois and Kerry. So we have a couple of comments coming in here, so let's read them out. Richard Hogan says Galway 5, Wexford 6. A. Sully 180 from 3 to 6 after one poor outing. Lads. So, but look, I mean, we can't ignore what Galway did in that Leinster final. It was pretty poor, but maybe this weekend they'll put us straight. Mike Sinnott, Leinster teams might not be that far off Munster teams. Well, they've had 5 years to show us that. And, well, it is 5 years since Galway won it. A Connacht native. No Leinster native team has won it since 2015. Kerry should be ahead of Laois, says Catnap. Put Kerry ahead of Waterford, says Declan O'Keefe. Patrick Coleman, Wexford are ahead of Galway after the results of last week. And Catnap is having good crack out of Declan O'Keefe's comment there about putting Kerry ahead of Waterford. So that's our hurling power rankings. You're happy enough with that?
No, I am. Yeah. I've lost whatever faith I had in Galway, to be honest with you. Maybe they'll rip that up at the weekend again.
Yeah, that can happen. That can definitely happen. There was a lot of football on this past weekend. I suppose the game that stood out more than any had to be the performance of Armagh. They were unbelievable against Donegal, and especially like with the way things had gone early on in the game, the momentum shifts. That early goal into the top corner was absolutely brilliant. That really kind of set the tone in this game. But after that, I think Donegal went on a run of 9 points to 2, and then you thought, well, okay, they're the more seasoned team. They've beaten Donegal or Armagh a couple of times this year. They're going to kick on. But it was a monumental collapse that we saw after that, wasn't it?
Oh, it was big time. Like, it's funny, any team can be hit with an early goal, as Donegal were yesterday, and sometimes the early goal can almost it sounds a bit silly, but it can come a bit too early, and you can almost think you're going to kick on. And Armagh didn't kick on at all. Donegal dominated the first 15 or 20 minutes thereafter, and you're kind of thinking, I was looking at the energy Donegal were bringing from the back. And I just thought even their choice of shots and things like that was quite good. Murphy was getting a small bit of joy inside, won a free, kicked a point. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, like, it's too much to say that the game turned on the black card / penalty incident, but it had a big bearing on the game, a massive bearing on the game.
Would you say just Donegal's inability to work out short kickouts? Because 2 in a row just caused pandemonium in their own half of the field. And once Armagh just got, I mean, I can't blame Sean Patton for the second one.
No.
For the first one, obviously that's his mistake. But for the second one, the defender had it, spilled it, then got turned over. And I'm not sure what Patton is supposed to do. Is he supposed to allow the attacker to just tap it into the net? He puts his arms around him. When it's obvious that the attacker is about to knock it into the net, then he rugby tackles into the ground. It had a bit of a Joe Sheridan vibe to it just for a second. But I mean, you can't say anything to the referee as well either. He had to do a black card, had to be a penalty. But it's just, like, teams concede goals. Armagh, like you said, they conceded that or scored that early goal through Grugan. And Donegal didn't wilt at that stage. They turned it around. But God almighty, how did Donegal fall apart like this? This is year 5 under Declan Bonner. Stephen Rochford is there for 3 years. And for their team to wilt like this, I mean, they mustn't know what to think this morning.
As well as that, before we go into that, what was going on the sideline with regards to trying to get the keeper in? The keeper running into the keeper obviously didn't have his number 16 jersey on, which is not good because he basically was not prepared to be on the field.
And when have we seen an outfielder, Quayla McGonigal, trying to save a penalty?
I don't know when the last time was, and just that for Reno Neal's point of view, just a brilliant penalty that would have left, wouldn't have mattered really who was in goals. Just brilliant, pure power, pure precision, perfect placement. It's absolutely brilliant penalty. And then you're bringing on a keeper, like, it's just, I don't know, it just seems mad. You're bringing on a keeper after conceding a penalty, after the penalty's been scored. Just a really, really strange one. Then you saw Paddy McBrearty with some fairly choice language to Sean Patton in the dugout, because he was obviously the one that was sacrificed for the sub keeper to come in. And yeah, the wheels just totally came off thereafter. In the second half, Donegal had no energy, just had no impetus, no leadership. And it's like the end of an era, as I said on the Sunday game yesterday, like the big pillars of Tyrone, Donegal and Monaghan, all gone at the All-Ireland quarter-final stage. And even when you look at it, the 4 provincial runners-up, all beaten over the weekend in their qualifiers, none of them making it through to the All-Ireland quarter-finals. But from a Donegal point of view, like, I'd be amazed if that wasn't the end of the road for management and potentially for some players as well. And you can say that there has been a lot of kind of younger ages of guys being brought through, but when you have Michael Murphy, nearing the exit door, and you have Patrick McBrearty nearing the exit door, there's a big rebuild coming there over the next couple of years, and I'd imagine it would be new personnel in charge of the rebuild.
Like, they went on a run of, I mean, at one stage it was 1-11 to a point, Armagh did, and it probably even got worse, and Stephen Sheridan had that goal late on. And I don't know, like, did you think McBrearty and Murphy inside together worked? It did kind of early on, but I wouldn't put it down to that. The collapse was so total across the board that you couldn't just put it down to them. But they do look at like a team, like, and I had this debate with Kieran Cunningham, of the former colleague of mine at the Irish Daily Star, a Donegal man, and I was tweeting about how with all that talent and they're getting this little out of it, and he was questioning, he was asking, I'm paraphrasing him of course, but is there actually that much talent there? And I would have thought that there is. I mean, this is 5 seasons for Bonner here, and they won a couple of Ulster titles in the first 2 seasons, 2018 and 2019. But Murphy might be 32 going on 33 now, but he would have had at least 3 of those years where ostensibly he's supposed to be in his prime. You had Jamie Brennan, who was Ulster Footballer of the Year at one stage during this. Paddy McBrearty, he should be in the middle of his prime years at the moment, made his debut in 2011 at 17. So he's in his prime years right now, should be. There's an awful lot of good footballers there. Michael Langan, Kieran Thompson, Hugh McFadden. And yet, and underage teams that had been getting, really far in their competitions.
Ryan McHugh, Owen Bon Gallagher.
Brendan McCall, a good fullback. And, I mean, for my money, I can't understand how Donegal have come up this short year after year.
Yeah, no, it is a strange one. It's kind of hard to get your head around. You do think that there's a lot of talent there. Obviously, we don't know the scene intimately. But just from chatting a few kind of Donegal kind of natives, they'd question what the conveyor belt is going to be like over the next couple of years, and seem to think that there's a fair bit of a rebuild on, and that this potentially could be the end of that kind of. Not to say it was a golden decade, but they obviously won an All Ireland within the last decade, and won a fair whack of Ulsters in there as well. But that was just. Do you know what that reminded me of? That reminded me of the Armagh game that led to McGuinness getting the job in the first place.
Was that the 2010 game? The 2010 game, which was their most recent win over them. Jamie Clark scored 2 goals.
Yeah, that's what that reminded me of. Like, you'd have to say the wheels totally came off yesterday. It's not 7 days since they were beaten in a provincial final as well. It's 2 weeks. I know it was extra time. I suppose from a hurling point of view, this is the worry that you have about Clare this weekend. Is it an extra time provincial final defeat? The physical toll of that, but also the mental toll of it, because Donegal look absolutely spent physically and mentally in that second half. And based on what we had seen under McGuinness even, and staying going and going and going and going, they just looked like a spent force yesterday. And it's going to be intriguing to see what happens over the next couple of weeks and months there.
Are you a believer in Gal or in Armagh? They've got Galway next, and I'm looking forward to seeing Armagh at Croke Park. I was there for the league game against Dublin, and League is League and all that kind of stuff. And this is something that Davy Burke and Enda Varley, who in our podcast last night, keep an eye out for that, was brilliant. I'd only call it a roller coaster. The two boys shooting from the hip for the guts of an hour. Absolutely brilliant analysis of the football, but so much insight too. But do you think that Armagh can kick on from here? Do you think there's more in them?
Well, I tell you what, Shane, there's an opportunity to kick on now. If they'd been thrown in against Kerry, probably would have been a difficult draw. Dublin would have been a very exciting draw. Would they beat?
Didn't want Derry really. They've had enough Ulster competition.
Yeah, so this is a brilliant draw. This is a brilliant draw for them in that if they beat Galway, they're still probably taking a scalp. There's a passage through to an All-Ireland final there. Someone's just gonna have to stand up and take it. But there's a passage through to an All-Ireland final there. So we're looking at Kerry and Mayo on one side.
Kerry, Mayo and Dublin all on the one side, yeah.
Yeah, Jesus, opportunity really knocks on the other side. And do you know what I'm thinking as well? When you look at it, opportunity knocks for Clare as well.
Clare for the double.
You never know.
Or Cork for the double.
I don't think it'd be Cork for the double. I cannot see them getting within an arse's roar of Dublin if I'm being honest with you. But on the other side of the draw, opportunity really knocks. And as Patrick says there, Armagh can beat Galway. Definitely have the players to beat Galway without a doubt. And that's going to be one of listen, there's probably 3 of the 4 are really intriguing quarter-final games, aren't they?
Can you imagine John Cleary now in the dressing room heading up to the Dublin game? Michael Verney says we won't get it within an ass's roar of these lads today.
And they'll be like, who's Michael Verney?
and they'll also go, but he's probably right.
Yeah.
Catnap says Dublin Cork has massacre written all over. Look, a couple of years ago, I was at that game between Cork and Dublin and Croke Park. Was it a qualifier or was it a Super 8 game? It might have been Super 8. And Cork were really good against them for 60, 65
They were brilliant,
minutes.
yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, but it just feels that they kind of have gone back a bit. But there are good signs this year, because if you go to that game against Kerry at Páirc Uí Rinn, they were very good for 40-odd minutes. And I know they faded away and it ended up being a hammer. But it showed that they've got the football. They've got the little bit of class as well. They don't have everything. Their shot selection is insane at times. But they do have talent.
Yeah, just on Cork, obviously, I'm not trying to be disingenuous. I just can't see them getting close to Dublin. That's just giving an honest opinion. But I'll tell you what, the door kind of opened for them to get to the quarterfinals. And in fairness, they jumped through it. And if you go back to what have they won? If they won 4 of their last 5 games, going from Division 2, the end of Division 2, the whole way into the Championship. They were expected to beat Limerick, or would be expected to beat Limerick, and they beat them. They would be expected to beat Louth, and they beat them, which in recent years, maybe they have been games that maybe they've, disappointed in. So I don't think you can ask for much more than that. They're in a weird kind of rebuilding phase at the moment. But the results, given that they're in the middle of that, they haven't been half bad at all.
No, and they've had injuries, they've had players walk away from the panel, they've had their manager been appointed this year, and then, unfortunately, Keith Ricken had to step away due to health reasons. It's been a tough road. They've had a lot to put up with, and also they're very much the secondary sport in the county as well. So I do hope that they don't get a hammer, and I hope they can give a good performance here. John Quain says, Armagh Kerry All-Ireland football final, Donaghy factor. Oh, Kieran Donaghy would not enjoy having to come up against his native county. I'd say he's delighted that the news cycle for the next couple of weeks before quarter-final isn't about Donaghy against Armagh, isn't he?
Some crack, that's 20 years on from the last meeting. And that's not beyond the realms of possibility either. Sure it's not.
20 years. 2006 was they met. Are
No,
you talking about the most recent? Oh, yeah, but sorry, it was the final. Sorry, I was thinking more recent championship.
When Armagh beat them in the final. That's not beyond the realms of possibility either. Asher Donaghy he'd be in an awful position personally. For a media point of view, he'd be in an unbelievable position for us.
he'd be fairly in demand too. But we were talking about Cork beating Limerick there. It was 218 to 116. But that black card to Gordon Brown had been a pretty tight game. And this was a theme we saw throughout the weekend, that when a team sees the opposition get a black card, that you have to put the boot on the throat. Mayo did it. I think Armagh did it, and also Cork did it as well. But I thought it was a very harsh one against Limerick. What did you think?
Yeah. It was harsh. And if you look at it, they were chasing the game there after that 10 minutes then. I think it was 1-3 to no score during that time. They were always kind of chasing to try and get back on an even keel. The goal obviously had them back close. And Cork obviously went down to 14 men then as well, when that was a mad... Yeah, that was a really kind of rush of blood to the head. 90 seconds or 2 minutes, just he ends up on the line. But in fairness to Cork, they kind of responded pretty well to that. But the black card didn't think it was a black card, if I'm honest with you. Didn't think, and it changed the game somewhat too. No more than the Donegal game, as you said there. That black card changed the game there too, but that was totally justified.
Yeah, and I'm sure for Galway or Limerick, they wish that Josh Ryan was available to play the entirety of the game. He was able to come on, and he made a bit of an impact there. But if you have that size of a man in the square, it's really going to cause an awful lot of issues for the opposition. So the other thing is, people were saying on Twitter yesterday that the man went down easy when Paul Walsh struck. And maybe he did, and maybe he hammed it up a little bit. But the reason that I thought he has to go here is that he didn't have one bite, but 2 bites at the cherry with the swinging arm. So I think he was probably always going to go for that. And then the same Limerick man who went down for that gave away a crazy penalty a few minutes later. I couldn't understand going in as rashly as that. Force the man, just try and make it difficult. Force him to take a shot. If he scores a goal, he scores a goal. But a penalty, most of the time you should be scoring penalties. It was just a little bit rash, I thought.
Yeah, there was a defender actually behind him as well that potentially could have blocked. And plus, it was a corner back going through, with due respect. I know Oisin Mullen had a great finish in the Mayo game, but you'd probably let them take the shot. It's not David Clifford coming through. And that was kind of that was Limerick's opportunity, and it was kind of gone then. It was they had done some great work to get themselves back into not a winning position, but at least to bring Cork down the stretch, potentially force extra time. But that was kind of the final nail in their coffin, really.
Yeah. So I thought that Stephen Sherlock produced some really nice moments as well. He has this little habit now, maybe he's been doing it for years and we haven't known about it, where he runs at a man, hand passes it over their head, allows it to bounce. It has to bounce before you can regather possession as well. And off he goes on his bike. Really good. Brian Hurley had some good moments, but I think a bit and we'll talk about Mayo Kildare shortly, but a bit like Daniel Flynn, sometimes takes on too much on his own when he could bring in his teammates and maybe either set up a handy score for a teammate or give and go and get the ball back again. I think sometimes it's a little he's so talented. It's with both of these players, it's just a bit frustrating that sometimes they force an issue and take on shots that just aren't there and hit wides that kind of hurt their own team when they could just give and go a little bit more, trust their teammates a little bit more. And I get it. You know, you're probably there and the talisman and everyone is expecting you to deliver, so you feel you have to take it on your shoulders. But sometimes it's just be a bit more simple and bring other players in, I feel.
Sometimes the opportunity or the door opens for an opportunity. A lot of the time you've seen it. Like, how many times have you seen teams in games trying to force a goal? It just doesn't. It doesn't really happen. It's like you're trying to force a shot. You're trying to make something out of nothing. It doesn't happen that often. You know, it's when you're forcing it, you know, it's probably not going to work out, and that probably happened a good few times. When Daniel Flynn does a piece of genius for Kildare, as he invariably does, you can see it happening. You can see it. Some sort of a door opening and him going through it. When he forces it, it often doesn't happen. Andrew Sullivan here said, hand pass over the head to yourself. Mike Verney trademark move, under 10 community games football. That's a fact, yeah. You used to love that one. Whereas now you'd probably be, I don't know, sometimes you'd nearly be seen as a bit selfish if you were doing it now. But people don't expect it. And particularly if a team is going 1-to-1, you put the ball over their head. If you have the pace to get past them, you're either going to bounce you're either going to collect the ball, or they're going to do, you know, the way a lot of the time now when you give away a pass, a lad will just stop you, body check you. So it's either going to be free or you're going to probably move along with possession now, providing there's space in front of you. So I do think it's an effective tactic, yeah, without doubt.
Yeah, Mayo beat Kildare 213 to 14 points. And Kildare, you know, they really had this game bent to their will at one stage and flopped later on. And again, it's just taking on ridiculous shots when they could feed it to someone else who'd knock it over the bar. And I'm not singling out any one player here, but they were very frustrating to watch. Like, Mayo are into an All-Ireland quarter-final, and you're really feeling the pinch here with Ryan O'Donoghue not being available and Tommy Conroy not being available, because after watching this game and how poorly these forwards performed, you know, this team was carried by the defence, not even the midfield, because Ruan and Aidan O'Shea weren't dominating the game either. Without the defence here, I mean, it was a Division 3 forward line at best, the way they played in this game. I thought they held Mayo back something fierce, and that's the main reason why I can't see them going too much further.
Yeah, I'd say James Horn has no idea what his best six forwards are at the moment, or what his attack is going to be even for the Kerry game. It's funny there when you said, not going to single out lads, but Shane Stapleton, Michael Verney were absolutely terrible the other day. One of these days it will happen. You're not going to single out someone and you just go and list off a lot of names. But what you say about Kildare there, like, they were in such a good position. I don't know if you have written down your notes there. When Daniel Flynn was blocked for the goal, how many points were Kildare going up at that stage? Were Kildare going 7, or am I wrong in saying Kildare were going 7 or 8 up if that had went in? Because that was lights out. That was lights out if that had went in. And all of a sudden then a couple of minutes later, the opportunity arises kind of for Oisin Mullen. And that was a really weird one, Shane, because it's almost like one of the Kildare tacklers pushed him into space almost, and then it all just opened up. And who was it only? Like, it was a full-back. Yeah, 6 points, Andrew says there. It would have been hard to come back from that. It was a full-back going through, passing to a substitute cornerback, back to the full-back, into the back of the net. And that was just kind of indicative of what Mayo were at the other night. Like, Lee Keegan kicked a point the other night that was basically Kevin Cassidy's point, only 10 yards closer, off his left foot, kind of leaning back. A shot he probably even had no right to be taken on, but that's just probably the leadership that he shows. But only for those couple of guys coming up with those couple of bits of class, I thought Mayo's goose looked cooked the other night. They looked in really big trouble at different stages the other night. The attack was so limp. Then all of a sudden they got their head up, and Dermot O'Connor's kicking a point from the sideline, and there's a few lads kicking points. But Asher, listen, they're coming into the game. They're coming into the game against Kerry now. They'll be written off yet again, and it's the sort of time when they'll produce a performance. It just is like.
But isn't that typical Mayo? They play up to the level of a top team, and if they're playing a Midland team, they maybe drop down a level or two. But that forward line, I mean, I'm specifically not naming players, but they were dreadful. They were really dreadful, and all year I've had concerns about this Mayo forward line and, you know, the lack of incision or what have you. But never has a team been more reliant on its backs. Its backs both have to be defenders and forwards. I mean, go through some of the scoring here done by the backs. Oisin Mullen a goal. McLaughlin 2 points, Lee Keegan 2 points. I mean, it's not sustainable. And then it was substitutes who largely got scores after that. A couple of the starters did get a few points. I know they did, but just giving away so much ball. Do you give Glen Ryan and Kildare much credit for, I suppose, the turnaround from the Leinster final where they conceded 5 goals, looked dreadful, were a mile off their men, weren't putting pressure on, very passive, and they just got rolled over. They were a little bit better here. They made 5 changes. It's definitely a subject of debate that Aaron O'Neill came in. He was obviously lobbed late on. He had 1 or 2 kickouts that went against him. He did make 1 brilliant save from Owen McLaughlin, did a lot of things well. But Mark Donnellan, it wasn't as if he'd made a load of mistakes in goal in the Leinster final. So some people were a little bit, found that a little unusual. And again, Davy Burke and the Varley should watch the podcast and them talking about it. But do you give Kildare a little bit of credit, or do you just say, geez, game management was on the floor here? That, they had this game won and they just threw it away. So how can you give them credit?
There's a few things in it. How can you go into a Leinster final and set up tactically the way that they set up and then go into a qualifier game and put 15 players behind the ball? So are you telling me that before the Leinster final, any sort of defensive setup had I'm not saying it never been practiced in training or nothing like that, but how do you sleepwalk into a Leinster final and not have some sort of a system in place to at least, have a body or two in front of Conor O'Callaghan or Kieran Kilkenny or Cormac Costello? And then how do all of a sudden do you press a button, the Tuesday or Wednesday after Leinster final and just go to play? Like, they had no one up, 0. It was 15 men behind the ball. So I'm just not sure. Like, that, to me, I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do, but they just totally pressed the nuclear button, and that was what they were doing. I just don't know how that hadn't been practiced or implemented before the Leinster final. I really don't. It doesn't make sense to me. They got a big reaction the other day, in fairness, but when the game was there to be won and they put themselves into a really, really good position, there was nothing left. There was literally nothing left with 10 or 15 minutes to go. I mean, mentally and I mean physically as well. Like, looking at Daniel Flynn could hardly even jog in the last 5 or 10 minutes. His legs were totally gone, and there was a few kind of lads there with him as well. So like, there's a bit of credit to Kildare, but like, you're giving Kildare credit for playing well in what I would have reckoned was like probably the worst half of intercounty football I've seen in a long, long time. Like, the first half was atrocious. I think Joe Crowley had it in the Sunday games. The first half was like, or in the Sunday Independent, it was like a bad audition for the underdogs. And he said none of the players would have made the cut. It was really, 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 really hard to watch. Fair play to them. They reacted again. They showed something from the Leinster final, but my head is a bit scrambled by what they were doing for the Leinster final, and then all of a sudden to be doing this now. Like, is it not just like a total overreaction to one game? Should they not have been prepared for the Leinster final and had some sort of systems in place, some sort of defensive structure, some sort of a plan, a +1 or a +2 for playing Dublin in the Leinster final? I still can't get my head around it.
Yeah, I mean, they scored some brilliant long-range points in the first half, but this, across the board, I can't understand this, that the amount of pot shots that go on with different inter-county teams who are training together for months and months and years, that they don't just talk about how we'll keep working the ball like Dublin did for years, like Limerick are doing at the moment, until we have a man in the right possession, that they don't go back over the clips and show a player some of the ridiculous shots he's taken on and say, well, what did you think of this shot? Do you think this was a good decision? Okay, if you do that the next day, you're going to be whipped off in the first half. We don't care. We've loads of lads on the sideline who are willing to do the right thing. And make this example within training sessions, initially privately, and then also to everybody, and say, look, we're not picking on anyone in here, but here's a selection of clips from a lot of you different players taking on pot shots. You're going to get us knocked out of the championship. Teams routinely get knocked out of the championship just for pot shots alone. And I'm talking both codes here. And Kildare frustrated the life out of me. And ultimately, the pot shots that worked early on, when the pressure was truly on later on, didn't work out, and you're out of the championship because of it.
I'm not picking on anyone here, but if Shane Stapleton takes another pot shot.
But just to talk a little bit more about Mayo, I don't rule them out beating Kerry either. At the same time, I've cut the back off them here for 10 minutes, but at the same time, I don't rule them out beating Kerry.
It's funny. Saw a couple of tweets the other day. Turned off the Mayo game when they were 6 points down. You're not fooling anyone, lads. We knew what the result was going to be. Like, you just think it was Gavin Casey from the 42. I got a good laugh out of that one. But the Porter makes a good point here. Says if you put Keegan and another back on Clifford, and maybe one of their other best forwards, who's going to get scores for Mayo then? Because their forwards won't, he said. So if you have Mullen...
Keegan will still go forward.
Yeah, but if you have Mullen and Keegan, would say Mullen will potentially pick up Clifford, I would say. So
was he on Daniel Flynn the entire game?
The vast majority of it, from what I could see, anyway. Yeah,
Still burst forward to score.
Yeah, no, that's true too. Yeah, that's true too. But when it's Clifford, you're probably going to really mind him and really go man to man, and maybe not take away your own energy by going
sit
forward.
In his knickers the full game.
Yeah, but if Mayo does not ensure, then they will raise their game for Kerry, particularly a Kerry team that absolutely blew them away. What was it, 3-19-13 in the league final?
Yeah, but they didn't have any of their, like from deep power runners in that game. It was basically that Mayo forward line, plus they didn't have their star defenders.
Okay. Yeah, TVPC says, are the draws fixed? The games are fixed for the quarterfinals, but no venues yet. That's going to be interesting.
It'll all be at Croke Park, sure.
More than likely. Yeah,
even though Croke Park, like, I'm sure you were there, Mayo, Kildare, Clare, Roscommon, didn't feel like the right venue.
No, definitely not. No. For the vast majority of the Clare Roscommon game, which was a brilliant game, to be fair, back and forth, there was, not that much atmosphere. It was really only with probably 15-20 minutes to go that when people started filtering in, I'd say you could probably hear a bit of a noise around. For Kildare and Mayo, there was a bit of noise, but like, you're essentially playing in an empty stadium, really. Do you know what I mean? It's just, it totally takes away from the spectacle of it all. There were seagulls flying around the whole way during the second game. And I always think it's a really bad sign of a game when you can see crisp packets blown across the pitch. Do you know? And that never happens in a full stadium. You never see that.
Oh, yeah, sure. Like, if you have 10,000 there, they'll have nothing but crisps. If you have 80,000, they won't have crisps.
When have you seen in a big game a load of crisp packets with 80,000 people blown across the field, and you don't see seagulls flying overhead when there's 80,000 people there either?
Yeah, I can't explain the crisp packet thing. You would imagine there'd be more crisp packets around, but I just don't know. I can't explain that one as well. What about Clare beating Roscommon? People thought that this was going to be a Roscommon win. Surely it had to be. But lo and behold, they're into an All-Ireland quarter-final. And, everyone says it at this stage. What a job Colin Collins has done. Of course, it's absolutely true. Like, it's been fantastic. But the way they turned this game around late on, again, you talk about game management. Roscommon didn't manage this one. They were up, wasn't it, by 5 points late on. And then just a little turnover of possession around midfield. Goal ends up happening. Jamie Malone with that winning score. I mean, that's the sort of point that you dream of scoring when you're a young lad. And I mean, he's coming up to Croke Park. This is Clare's first championship game at Croke Park since 2016 against Kerry, I think, when they were beaten soundly enough. And as you said, it's over 100 years since they won a game, the footballers at Croke Park. What a winning score.
Savage score, yeah, especially from a defender. But he's obviously a defender with an attacking background. He would have played in attack mostly. He was actually quiet enough until the latter stages of the game. Then all of a sudden, he put the ball in for the penalty where Gavin Cooney, who had come on, was fouled. Anthony Cunningham thought it was harsh enough penalty. I didn't think so. I thought he was getting ready to pull the trigger and it was fouled. I thought it was kind of obvious enough, to be honest with you. Brilliant penalty from Keelan Sexton, who was doing little kick-ups before the penalty. He was obviously pretty relaxed.
Yeah, and Varley described the penalty as SH1T.
I didn't think it was that. It was a fine penalty.
Hey, it went in the net. No, he did say it went into the net and Sexton had a great game, but he did think it was an SH1T.
It's funny you should say that, but like that went into the net. The previous goal just went over the line and just about. And it was kind of went to kick it, and it was like 3 lads converged on him, and the ball just kind of rolled just about over the line. Sexton's contribution was big though, nearly from place balls more so than anything else. Kicked a couple of boomers off the ground from 45 and even a bit further in the second half, particularly the one to level it up at 2:14 to 1:17. That was a brilliant free off the ground. Then, as you say, Malone came forward. Malone's point was actually Clare's first score from play in the second half. And they actually went, I think we went between the 36 minute and the hour mark between scores when like Roscommon totally turned the screw. They hit 6 in a row. Donny Smith came on and kicked the point. Richard Hughes came on and kicked the point. Kieran Murta kicked the point, and was it Ronan Daly came forward and kicked 2 scores, and his brother Connor kicked a point as well. And you just looked like Roscommon had turned the screw. Then they extended the gap to 5 points. It's 117 to 112, and then
they had it won.
They did have the game totally won. And for a team that's played in Division 1 and has that experience, you would have thought that they would have been able to stem the bleeding somewhat. Maybe someone goes down, something happens, just to cut off that bit of momentum, but they weren't able to do it, and they were left absolutely shell-shocked after. And if you look back just through Colin Collins' record, obviously got promoted from Division 4. They won the Division 3 final in 2016, ended up in All-Ireland quarter-final that year, the first one in quite some time. They've 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, they've retained their Division 2 status. Apart from, getting beaten by Kerry within Munster, some really, really competitive results there. They've had really good runs in the qualifier, beat Meath last week, beat Roscommon this week. And I think the draw has worked out okay for them.
If they were to pick one team, and look, they knew they'd be massive underdogs no matter who they get, they probably would have went with Derry, maybe with Galway. And I suppose the fact that they'd know Galway relatively well, being neighbours, they'd be probably even happier still with that. But if you were told before the game that Owen Cleary would score just 2 points and they'd both be frees, you'd be thinking there isn't a hope that Clare are going to win this game. Because he is their talisman, he's a brilliant footballer. But it just shows that other lads were able to step up, and obviously Sexton being the primary one.
100%. He was kept very quiet. But then on the other side, you maybe had Emmet McMahon chipping up with 2 points. You had Cathal O'Connor, who was brilliant at midfield, just bombing forward. He kicked 2 as well. Sexton was obviously very good. On the other side of that, like, Enda Smith was totally kept out of the game. I looked at Pierce Lillis dropped back from wing forward and had no interest in anything that was going on in the game, only just keeping Enda Smith out of the game. And I think he got 1 shot away, and I think he might have been fouled once. But outside of that, Sexton is probably man of the match. Pierce Lillis was right up there with me, for me anyway, just because he kept their best player out of the game. But another brilliant result, and a great line from Colin Collins after. I think he kind of thought he was speaking maybe off the record, because he was kind of because he was.
Well, you'll ensure he wasn't.
No, because he was having a bit of crack with us, and he just said, "People are saying to me, why are you 9 years in the job? I'm 9 years in the job because I have an incredible bunch of players. If these fellas were tosspots, nobody would stay with them 9 years. They're just incredible." Just a really great line, but he's right. And Colin will never give any praise to himself, and will always deflect praise back on the players. And I have to say, isn't it a dream scenario to be with a group like that just don't know when they're beaten and will just eke every bit of, defiance out of themselves? Like, let's call a spade, Shane. You would have thought that Clare were going to struggle when Gary Brennan retired, as I would have had. Of course you would have had. Like, David Tuberty, they're probably one of their best players over the last 15 years, didn't start the other day. And they're still able to produce a result without these guys. There's just a few new faces popping in every couple of years. Colin brings all these lads in as part of developmental for a year or two. Then all of a sudden, when lads retire, they're ready to come in. And the whole thing has just kept churning along. It's hard to put your finger on exactly what he's done, but the fact that Clare it was like Monaghan there for a while, probably punching above their weight and eking every little bit out of themselves. And it's a dream scenario for any manager, but it's a dream scenario because he has created it, really.
Yeah, and I saw someone tweeting last night about how, I can't remember who it was, but somebody from a soccer background was tweeting that they wanted Keane D, who wore number 5 with the pony.
Shane Keegan, yeah.
Shane Keegan had tweeted about seeing if he could be available for some soccer game or other. To be honest, I can't remember the competition. Maybe it was the Oscar Trainer or something like that.
Yeah.
But he texted Colin Collins saying, could he play? And he was nearly expecting to be told to go take a run and jump. But instead it was like, I'm sure we'll find a way to make it work. And I think players appreciate that too. And if their life outside of the panel is being catered for or basically not being made more difficult, that you're going to give that a little bit more for the manager. So, fair play to him there.
The manager cares about you. You care about the manager, and will go to the ends of the earth. I remember even Jason Byrne saying to me that he did an interview with Colin Collins on the side of the road one year while he was selling tickets for some draw down in Clare or in Cratloe. That's just the way he is, like.
Yeah, and Derek Lynch, who works for Clare FM, says, apologies to Verney from the Clare FM team, who nearly blew the ears off everyone around us for the closing stages. Were they all that bad?
Yeah, Derek, in fairness to him, is able to stay very unbiased, impartial during these things. But Croke Park is a funny one. You could, like, he was sitting a row ahead of me, and because there's a little bit of a wind, you could be blaring the head off someone, and you think you're blowing the whole press box out of it. But you can hear them, but it doesn't. He wasn't affecting my work anyway. But I wouldn't blame them. Like, what a fairy tale kind of a finale. It was just like they looked dead and buried. They'd played brilliant stuff in the first half, and then it looked like the game had turned completely. Donny Smith had come on for Roscommon. Not sure why he didn't start. He'd come on, had made a bit of an impact, and it looked like the Rossies were going to coast home. And then all of a sudden, you couldn't call it a smash and grab because they'd been the better team for probably the first 40 minutes. But just a great finish, and they're in a really good position now, and they're not playing. I'm delighted they're not playing a Kerry. I think Donegal Boyle from the Indo tweeted yesterday, and it's Clare versus Kerry in the All-Ireland quarter-final, because that would have been their luck, I suppose, from the last few years. They've gotten bad draws in Munster even, but they'll fancy that one now in a couple of weeks, definitely.
We'll have to come to GOATs in a second. I'm going to the GOAT of the week. I'm going to read out some of the other results to give you an opportunity to think about your GOATs there in both codes. The All-Ireland Minor Football Championship quarterfinals, Galway beat Dublin by 10 points to 7. High-scoring game between Mayo and Kildare, 3-18 to 3-12 to the Connacht men. Cork lost by 6 points to 12 to Derry, and Kerry saw off Tyrone by 8 points to 1-4. The All-Ireland Ladies Football Championship round 1. Kerry 3-10, Galway 3-8, Waterford 1-5, Donegal 10 points, Mayo 1-16, Tipperary 1-6, Dublin hammered Cavan 5-14 to 2-4, Meath 1-13, Monaghan 1 point there, so that's pretty one-sided there. Plenty of other fixtures over the weekend as well, but just to come back to your GOAT of the week.
Just 1 second, Shane. 1 second before you go to it. Just a little bit worrying to see some of the scorelines from the All-Ireland Minor Championship over the weekend. Tyrone 1-4, Kerry 8. I know it's about winning games. Cork 6, Derry 12, Galway 10, Dublin 9. I know it's about, I know it's about winning games when it gets to senior level. But Jesus, like the defensive structures that must have been in place in those games. Joy? Yeah, really, yeah. It's that's not what I don't think that's what minor football is about. And then I saw Kevin Egan's report from the Mayo Kildare game. It was an absolute barn burner. They shared 6 goals and 30 points. Mayo won by 6 points. Like the antithesis of the 3 games that preceded it. And I think that's just disappointing that teams are being set up in that way. What do we love most about under 17, under 20? And under 20 games? It's the freedom. It's like things that you wouldn't see at senior level. So you don't like to see that seeping down to minor level. Definitely not.
Okay, so GOAT of the week then. I'm going to give it to Conor Lehane for Cork. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. Keelan Sexton isn't too far off either. There's a couple of other lads with Antrim, but I give it to him. Who would you go for in the hurling?
Do you know what? And I didn't actually rate him the highest of the Clare players, but just when I talked about it a bit more, even think about it a bit more, I'm going to give it to Pierce Lilies. He kept Roscommon's best player out of the game, and I'm used to doing all that negative, horrible work myself as well, and he wasn't even looking at the ball at different stages. He was just worrying about Enda Smith. He kept Enda Smith out of the game, and Clare won the game. So I'm going to give it to Pierce Lilies. And
do you have anyone for hurling?
I didn't see enough hurling, Shane, to be honest with you. But no, I'm not gonna just jump out and give it to someone in a second. I didn't see enough of hurling, to be honest with you. I have to watch back those 2 games in full during the week. So no, I'm just gonna give football one. Too windy. Yeah.
I'm gonna give it to Rian O'Neill in football. I mean, what a performance that man gave. And this has got coming of age season written all over it for him. And I mean, I thought it when I saw the league game against Dublin earlier in the year, which can be overstated and all that, but just the way he does things is just so graceful and glorious. I couldn't not give it to him. And by the way, just a breakdown of the provincials. I think it's 3 Munster teams left, 2 Ulster, 1 Connacht, and 1 Leinster. So Munster football, we're on the up.
Munster football, technically, Munster is a dominant province in both codes now, isn't it? You'd have to say.
Yeah. Munster's back. Derek Goodison, why can't we have the hurling quarterfinals?
Tipperary are in neither of them. Jesus Christ.
Why can't you just leave that to the side? We don't need to talk about Tipperary for a while. I thought you'd be glad to have a break from Tip. How often do our viewers give out that I talk too much about Tipperary?
Yeah. No, but it's okay to talk negatively about Tip. That's fine. Nobody minds that. Like the boys, the Porter and SSRI and Flash and the boys would not care one bit if we have a Tipperary bashing show for an hour and a half.
Okay, well, look, that's it from the show today. I'm going to finish off by playing a bit of the opening segment, maybe the first few minutes, of Enda Varley and Davy Burke recapping on the football. This was Sunday evening around 7:30 p.m, so they were giving their initial thoughts on that. Michael, we'll be chatting again later in the week. Don't forget to sign up to the show, the patreon.com/OurGame, with Richie, Power and Kieran Kerry. It's been brilliant stuff absolutely every week. We had Derek Honan on last week. If you sign up now, you can watch all the previous shows there where they give great insights. So thanks very much, Michael, and enjoy Enda and Davy here.
How you doing? It's Davy Burke and Enda Varley here again, just to review the weekend's activity there. First up, we're going to look at the Armagh Donegal game from today. We're going to move on to Mayo v Kildare. Then we're going to have a look at Clare v the Rossies. And then finally, we're going to have a look at Cork and Limerick. First up, we're going to look at the Armagh Donegal game from this afternoon. And two teams that have played each other. I think this is the third competitive game against each other this year. So there'll be no love lost in this one. And Enda, how did you see this one go?
To be honest, I thoroughly enjoyed the first half hour anyway. After all the slagging I was giving Donegal the last day on this, but look, Donegal came out with a more positive attitude. I suppose they heard the critics against Kerry. I thought they obviously started off very well, especially the response to the first 10 seconds the goal went in, but they responded very well. But then I suppose getting into the latter stage of the first half, they a few defining moments, we'd say. The turnovers, the kickouts, and obviously the black card and the goal from that really kind of scuppered them, and their confidence and their kind of morale went to pot after that, and Armagh fairly capitalized from there.
Yeah. It started out when it went 9 points to 1-2. Yeah. I thought, we're on here. I thought Donegal were finally going to give us what we all think is it. Maybe finally live up to their ability, maybe in inverted commas, or at least to their names on paper, But it was some collapse really to go from 9 points to 1-2 up to the turnaround in the end. Like it's some swing, and particularly when again early on they had Rafferty on the ropes big time with the press. They pushed 13 men. Like from my reading of it, they left was Owen Bond, the keeper, and one other defender. I can't think of the other keeper, Caleb Ward, I think it was. They were the only people left in their half, and they 13 men inside the half. So it was serious going now, big press on, and really caused Rafferty problems. But once Armagh got to grips with that, really Donegal had nothing else. Really, they had no other threat.
No, look, Murphy and McBurty, it was great to see. They transitioned the ball quicker this time, a lot quicker. Patton and goal, it gave them a good platform. I think a couple of scores, it was literally 3-4 passes up the field, and you see Murphy inside and McBurty. They're two of the best footballers in the country, and they can do some serious damage when they're utilised in that way. It's just, I suppose, it's just a killer blow. The black card and the double whammy of the black card and the goal as well. It was, a great finish by Marine O'Neill. He took it very well. But after that, it was just, I suppose they were hurt. They came out the first half hour all guns blazing, but then when that bit of adversity came upon them, they kind of, I'm afraid to say, they kind of shut up shop, and that was kind of it. Armagh were very comfortable. They capitalised. They really put them away, especially during the black card, the 10 minutes. The goalie Patton was off, and they rounded off 3-4 scores there to really put the nail in the coffin, and Donegal simply had no answers. And to be honest, it was kind of, again, we're on about the management. This is Bonner's 5th year, and I'm afraid it kind of symbolised, it was the kind of the final nail in his coffin, to be honest with you. I suppose the first 2 years, feel good factor. They won the 2 Ulster titles, and ever since then, I suppose the last 3 years they haven't progressed, and they just haven't made that extra step, or that final step, should I say, into the top two, competing for All Irelands. And look, there will be a shake up, I presume, during the winter. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, it looks to me like it'll be the end of the road, and I think I spoke with this before. The staleness is evident. They look a team lacking imagination, lacking energy, lacking ideas, and I'd say they're just at the end of the road. It's probably a natural end, 4 or 5 years in the job.
Yeah.
You're not going anywhere. Not again, like we were talking about before, and not the end of the world, lads. You went in, you've done the job, fair play to a couple of Ulster titles picked up. Time to go. Again, doesn't mean the good, bad, or indifferent. Just time to go. That kind of way. So doesn't have to be this now. And a big thing, hopefully, as well. If they are to go, obviously we need to get away from all this online criticism and all this rubbish that's going on at the minute. And every manager is the worst in the world now, and everyone has been absolutely torn to shreds.
Nailed.
Yeah, it's so wrong. Like, it's so wrong. I heard Brendan Devaney or someone there today said a brilliant one. What did he say? Was it a 1 point of a difference between what did he say?
Against Derry, is it?
No, today he said a great
sorry.
one-liner. I can't think of the top of my head now. It'll come to me in a minute. But he came up with a great one. All he was saying was Donegal were 1 point away from winning the Ulster, and all of a sudden they're in crisis. But he had a great saying for it, And it's very true. Like, you're never as bad as you think, and you're never as good as you think. That kind of way. Right. So but this Donegal team, they're definitely at the end of this road, and they need a good shake-up, need to be rejuvenated, energetic. I'd say Rochford will probably move on, I'd say too. And I'd say they need to. But flipping it around, Armagh are very, very impressive, and I think they're a good side. I have to say, I was a couple of months ago, I was talking about Armagh. I thought they got their periodization wrong. I thought they came too hard, too early against Dublin in February, or they looked like world beaters in Croke Park. And I thought they just had trained harder than everyone else, or trained earlier than everyone else, etc., etc. But I have to say, I'm very, very impressed with how they did dip towards the end of the league and how they've ramped it back up again. I'm very, very impressed with their conditioning levels. But they're a brilliant team in their variation. They run the ball well and they kick the ball well. They really are a double threat team. And
there's one fatal flaw though, Jay. To be honest, I can't. Like, it's all well at the Raftery, the kickouts. Like, the top 3 teams are going to nail them on that, and that's a serious weakness on their part. If they get on top, look, they played a Tyrone team and they played a Donegal team, 2 teams that were literally not all yet. Well, Donegal are a bit different, but Tyrone were a spin force is not the right word.
Waiting to be beaten.
Waiting to be beaten. Yeah, exactly. Now, obviously, they have a really good squad, and there must be something going on in the inner circle that we don't know about. But again, they've had 2 teams that kind of were on the way down this year. I'm not saying they're spent forces. Rejuvenation is a good word to say. A new management team coming in there. They're really good squads. The two counties, and they can look at. They'll be back competing again next year, but they need a fresh voice there. So, like, with Armagh, to be honest, I'd be fearful. I would. I know they're a good squad. I know they're a good team, but I would be fearful for them against the top. The Kerrys, the Dublins. Yeah, we'll talk about Mayo now in a second. I won't put them in that bracket yet. But especially the Dublin, the proven winners. Like, if they put the squeeze in that kick out, and it is a bit of a novelty, and it's exciting with the goalie coming out. But like, instead of, I don't. He's a keeper, he's a forward in the club scene, and I will kick back on this a small bit. I think that a goalie should be basically making that overlap, getting out of defence. I don't think the goalie should be going up 100, as you said last day. Pitch is 140 meters. 100 meters, he has to travel up and down that pitch. I don't see the need for him. All he needs is an overlap, a wing back coming off, and
get you out.
To get you out. I don't. His kick out, as you alluded to say in the beginning, he was on commentary. I thought, you could see from the back of the goal, they overloaded. Donegal overloaded on one side, and he prefers the right hand side, kicking across his body for the left. Yeah. So, like, unless Armagh come up with some strategy. If the short kick out is not working, they're going to have to come up with some sort of strategy, overload one side, get 2 or 3 extra men around the breaking ball if they go long or when they go long, because teams will get 1-4, 1-5 that kick out. And you saw today the momentum. Once you get a goal, the momentum is absolutely huge, and it's very hard to change that.
And the pressure heaps on the keeper, and the next one can go anywhere. And all of a sudden the confidence is stripped out of the team. And if Dublin go Howard, McCarthy, Fenton, and who Tom hit for whoever across that back line, like, you know, you're not getting out. Like, you know, you're not getting out. And they could really, really do that. And they're the masters at it. And Kerry have shown over the years on and off, they're quite good on and off, you know. So absolutely. But the one thing I will say is, and I'm not here to say Armagh are better than they are, or I'm not here to promote Armagh necessarily. I was very, very impressed with them. Very difficult to play Donegal again, another Northern derby. Like, geez, I'd say they would have loved anybody else, you know. But they do. It's absolutely, you're dead right. It's obvious this is their biggest weakness. But if it's your biggest weakness, you can spend a lot of time on it. You know, you can spend a lot of time. And look, I absolutely agree with you. I think they're going to get themselves into bother. And for what Rafferty contributes, what does he contribute? Right, maybe a score or two a game, or maybe creates a score or two a game. But one goal off an intercepted kick out and it's undone. You know, completely undone and worse. So yeah, you're right. But then again, Blaine Hughes was the regular keeper. He's gone. I don't know if he's gone, but he's not involved. And so they obviously don't have another option at the minute. I'm not sure it's just a sweeper. I'm not sure I think Rafferty might be their best option at the minute without knowing the in-depths of the squad, you know?
Yeah, and McGeady did try this a few years ago, and I think he put Campbell in goal. Stephen Campbell. Was it Campbell? It was some outfield players.
Yeah, different lad, I think.
Yeah, and it was an absolute. Was it Campbell? I don't know. Anyway, it was a disaster. But look, I'm not bloody riding Armagh here. Look at their for Croke Park. I said this the last day. Croke Park will suit them. They're, as you said, they have a good balance between a kicking game and a running game. They have serious athletes, good middle third. They have some really good forwards. And you know, they seem, even look at some set plays. They got 1-1 from the throw in today. Like, you know, that first goal was unbelievable. It was just great to see, to be honest with you. So, and they have, look at Donaghy is good, and McKeever, three. You know, they're smart. They're smart coaches. They come across very smart, and they're well drilled. As you said, they probably went a bit hard at the start, and you know, they're peaking well here now. But again, if the draw is made on Monday, if they faced a Dublin, would I be saying Armagh will beat them? I can't, to be honest with you.
No. I don't think anyone will be saying that today. But I think Dublin's the worst draw for them, because Dublin are going to hold that league result. Dublin will remember that. They won't forget that league result in their home pitch. Well, sorry, inverted commas, home pitch. They won't like that. Dublin won't like that, and that'll work against them. Very similar to what Kildare done to Dublin and Newbridge in the league. Dublin held on to that. They'll never tell you they held on to that, but they held on to that.
They're pissed. They're absolutely.
So Armagh will get the same treatment of Dublin, I would imagine. You know, so they don't want them. I would say tomorrow, but all in all, you know, very, very competitive. I think they're a right good side. I think they're really improving. They have a marquee player, like a really marquee top drawer player. You can put him edge of the square. You can play him at 6, play him at 8, and see his distribution. That's 2 weeks in a row now. Quality. With Grugan pulling the strings at 11, you know, and you know, look at Conor Turbot off the line, like he's a right good player. I would have seen him up close this year with Queens. He's a right good footballer. You know, then you've obviously Nugent in the corner, and like they're Jason Duffy's there. They're a decent side, like overall, they're a decent side. Yeah.
Hold on, a couple of comments here. Shawnee K. Donegal were better team today, but goals change games. A quarter-final draw is a joke. It should be full open draw. Look, I agree. Goals do change games. Look, it was a turning point. Who knows if I think that, as you said, the black card and the goal, it was a double whammy for them, and you know they couldn't, and especially Armagh put the squeezers on it after that. It was actually great to see they went for it. They knew they're a bit of emphasis in their play. They're really trying to force the issue. They round off 4 or 5 scores from that and really put Donegal to the sword. You never once you have someone down by the neck, you don't let them up easily. No. So Armagh certainly did that.
expand on that point. That's 2 weeks in a row. Mayo done the exact same thing to Monaghan last weekend. The exact same thing. When McManus went off, Mayo squeezed right up the field for the black card, got 1-3 off it without reply, and won the game in that 10-minute period. And again today, clearly this is coaching. I'd say this is on the training ground. You're working on this scenario. You play 15 on 14 for 10 minutes or whatever it might be, and force the issue. Really go after them. And I'd be picking up bits off this myself, and I'm sure lots of other people are. The way people are going about these things, and if in the club championship later in the year, if an opposition team was to drop a number, I like. Whereas before, what do people do? They sit them as a sweeper end, or they play a +1 or whatever they might do, whatever. Whereas now it looks to me like teams are absolutely going overload, full court press, really squeezing high up the field, and for the better. I think that's absolutely for the better for the game. So but again, it's just all these learnings, all these different things the management at that level are all doing. It will start to filter down to everybody else, but it's very smart, very, very good coaching, I would believe. And 2 weeks in a row, a black card probably decided the game. 2 weeks in a row, it's huge decisions. When someone's gone for 10 minutes, it's massive. It's absolutely massive. Just one thing on the four splitting up the open draw. I'm not sure. What's the carrot for winning your province? Don't get me wrong, I'm no pro the provinces at all, but I'm just saying, if you do win your province and then Dublin and Kerry get each other in the quarterfinal, or Derry get Galway in the quarterfinal, I'm not sure that's fair either. And in every club championship or every championship that I know, the person who tops their group generally always gets seeded or whatever it might be. So your incentive in your round robin or your incentive in your provincial championship is to win it out, so you get that handier touch. And I think that's right, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, look, I agree with you, JB. I totally agree with you. There has to be some award for the provincial winners. Surely case in obviously Armagh played Derry and Galway Mayo in the quarterfinal. Well, Galway Mayo can't meet, and I don't think Armagh and Derry can they meet? Armagh and Kerry? No. I know Mayo can definitely meet Kerry, Dublin, or Derry. After that, can the provincials meet again?
I think, you know what? I don't know. I think unless you played each other in the provincial, I know Cork can't meet Kerry, and Clare can't meet Kerry. To be honest with you, it's so confusing. I don't know how many people actually know what is for such a simple 4v4. There's 4 names in this hat. There's 4 names in this hat. How absolutely ridiculously mad and complicated have they made this? That kind of way.
Yeah, I know.
But actually, look, it is what it is. So all in all, Armagh continue on. Donegal, big restructure, big rebuild, but players are still there. Probably 1 or 2 aging legs, but you'd be surprised what a new management can do. A new, positive, upbeat, energetic setup can get that team back in the road. I think definitely.
The funny thing is, JB, if like Donegal had to, we'll say when the goal and the black cards, when it happened, Donegal should have reverted back to the old Donegal style for that 10 minutes. Instead of game management, which is kind of funny to say, but like they're under the cosh and they just needed to ride out that 10 minutes. And they were so positive. And then like Patton was surprised today, just a couple of loose kickouts, as some of the comments said there. Yeah, like it is a momentum changer. Who knows if that didn't happen, the 2 short kickouts, if Armagh didn't get that, who knows, it would have brought fresh confidence into Donegal going in at half time, a point or 2 down, if even so it's fine margins. But again, Armagh were positive. They pushed up in the kick out. They tried, as in you'll get rewarded for being positive instead of the shite of letting it. I can't understand teams letting someone have their kick out.
Give them a platform. Give them a platform.
It annoys me so much.
I can understand. I can
get flag up.
Yeah, but I can get set in a trap now. Don't get me wrong. Now, when I was with Wicklow, just very briefly, right? We had a very athletic, strong run in midfield, right? But we didn't have, we no Fetcher. We no Fetcher, very little area across the half back line, right? Midfield area. So we were going on a Tipperary. Let's be very, very quick. Going on Tipperary in Semple Stadium, and you're talking about all half a Clonmel commercials across the middle, and they just could not compete with them, right? Just could not compete with them. So we conceded the ball to the 2, but we were setting a trap. So we didn't drop off, but we gave them the 2, and then we filtered across the field, and time again, we set the trap and we turned them over. So there's conceding the kick out by dropping off. That's for me is a no. It's an absolute no. You're giving them a platform to play. You're giving your opposition a platform to carry up the field. Whereas if you're conceding and setting a trap, that's different. You know, that for me is acceptable. If you're looking at your, right, we're not brilliant in the air here. If they kick 2 or 3 out, they could win clear marks, get runners, and we're in trouble. You know, that kind of way. Whereas, at least if they're 130 meters away and we're trying to set a trap and force them into it where we want them to go and get the heat on the ball where we want it on it, you know, that kind of thing. You know, so there is 2 different ways. You know,
there's actually an interesting Clark from Cavan actually said, was it 2 years ago when they played Dublin, that basically Dublin were very good at setting traps coming out of he was coming out of defence. Obviously Dublin were trying to overturn them in attack, and he basically said the Dublin players, you know, if like realistically or logically that player can only kick the ball 30 meters, so like everyone else can be in front of the man within reason, and if you get the squeeze on that, and if you mark the goalie, well, then that's, as you said, you're getting the trap on the player, and we soon see how good a cornerback is taking on his man with the, you know, with the sideline by, you know, 2 meters away from him. So it's just another interesting thing. I don't think a lot of teams do it, but definitely, again, I think Dublin are ahead of the game when it comes to
standard of coaching. It's all about the coaching. You know, if you do that night on night, because if the wrong man, this is the problem, Enda. If your midfielders step ahead of their man, the ball's getting dinked over their head and they're away. You know, so you have to be touch tight everywhere on the field that the ball can reach. As you said, they can only travel so far, right? And if you drop off 5 yards, they're getting out, and then the whole press, the whole idea is gone, you know, and they're wide open again. Whereas you can mark from the front when they're 40, 50 away, because then it's a 50-50 ball, they're kicking in and booting the ball, and you're happy enough for that, you know. But,
well, is that defender really is he really going to be able to kick it 40, 50 meters if someone's up his horse?
Yeah. Not accurately.
You know
Not accurately.
No, it's look, we're getting off the point, but anyway, look, I agree with you. I think look, we'll see how the draw goes. Fair play to Armagh. They're more positive. They put Donegal to the sword, and we'll see next week. Look, we're 20 minutes gone there. Next game.
Yeah. We'll move on to Croke Park yesterday, will we? First of all, I was there, and I was there. It was a bad game. It was a poor game. Now the conditions were terrible. I don't know if the TV showed this, but the conditions were horrendous. The wind into the canal end was against the canal end, against Mayo in the first half, was horrendous. The scoring zone was about 20 yards, 25 yards max now. And now, in fairness, Mayo kept shooting and and their shot selection and their game management against that wind in the first half was shocking for such an experienced team. Like Paddy Durkin, you know, Lee Keegan, they were dropping balls short, and Killian O'Connor missed the 14 or 21 yards. And, you know, really poor decision-making and game management and shot selection, I felt, by Mayo in the first half. But Kildare didn't capitalise enough their end. You seen the very first play of the game, Daniel Flynn catches a mark, 21 yards out, kicks with his left foot and hits the post. You know, like, that's not really good enough, you know. So, all in all, I felt it was... Kildare tried. There was huge pressure. I think both managements were under serious pressure. I'm sure you'll get into that in a minute. But under serious, and Kildare, in fairness, they made 5 changes to the team from the Leinster final. I wasn't sure about the keeper change before the game. I don't know why. I don't know what Donnellan done. Yes, you can see the 5 goals, but none of them are his fault, in my opinion. You know, none of them were a short kick out of went astray, or none of them was any of that type of stuff. So for me, I wouldn't have been laying the blame at his door. But 5 changes, played 15 men behind the ball, and ultimately probably didn't get the fresh legs in early enough to sustain it when they were on the 55th minute. I felt Kildare needed legs, and they had legs. And I don't know why Kildare only used 4 subs, and the 4th one was in the 73rd minute. I don't know why they hadn't flooded the field with 2-3 transition players after 55 minutes and you're 6 points up. You know, I don't know what happened there, but ultimately, what did they do? They pressed the kick out, so they tried, right? They dropped off the ball, so they shored the defence up. They gave away very little goal chances, maybe 3 in total. McLaughlin, Mullins, and Killian O'Connor had another one, right? So, in fairness to Kildare, they did learn a lot of the lessons of the previous case. You have to give them that, but ultimately ran out of legs, and I just would have thought they probably needed, you know, to get a bit more freshness in middle third, you know.
Yeah, look, I agree with most of that. And one thing, maybe the goalie he seemed to be coming out the pitch pressing is he a bit of more of a ball player than the other guy?
Yeah, well, no, he is. He's midfield for his club. He was my keeper in under 20, 2018, right, with Kildare. And Aaron's serious operator now. And yeah, he plays midfield for Carberry. I prefer him in goals myself, but he plays midfield because he's comfortable on the ball. There's no issue with any of that. He was coming out to press keeper. Maybe it was a tactic. I honestly don't know. Was he there to play the sweeper keeper? Was he there to play that role? He did come out. He did press kickouts. All I thought, Donlan wouldn't be that comfortable, even though he plays outfield as well for Mayo, but still, I don't think he'd be as comfortable as Aaron would be. But I wouldn't. To be honest with you, a couple of kickouts over the sideline. Robbie Henley done it, but there's no one talking about it. That kind of way, like Ethan Rafferty today. When you win the game, these things, when you lose the game, these things are always blown up. They're always blown up into way more than they really are. That kind of way. And I think a lot of the blame's been put on that young man championship debut. And for me, I wouldn't agree with. Yes, he made a mistake or two, but I wouldn't agree with. So did Henley. So did they all. Henley missed the 40-yard free. I think he dropped it short for Rob Henley. That kind of way. And a couple of balls over the line. So the keeper for me was completely blown out of the equation in his contribution. Yes, he contributed to the defeat, but I don't think I wouldn't be going as hard as a lot of the stuff I'm seeing.
Yeah, look,